Testing 1, 2, 3, 3, 2, 1. What the heck is bothering me? 1, 2, 3, 3, 2, 1. What the heck is bothering me? This is Brother Ron broadcasting from We All Be. Everything's sounding good. Sounding good. Partly clearly skies or some stuff like that. No more snow for the rest of the year. No more snow for the rest of the year. I don't need no more snow. I'm good for the next 2 or 3 years on snow. Down in the dirty. We don't need no more snow, shorty. We don't need no more snow. So I'm gonna let y'all get around chilling. Get around chilling. I got a story to tell. Got several stories to tell at once. This is We All Be, Brother Ron. Nobody does it like us at We All Be. It's News Free Dixie for the 21st century. But we got some stuff to talk about. Remembering the righteous ancestor, Brother Malcolm, Black Messiah. He was and is our shining black prince, our black manhood. It's time to resurrect and stand erect, black man. It's time to get what you want. Time for us to take our rightful place at the table, black man. Are you ready, black man? Are you able? Are you willing to fight for your right to exist as a man on this planet, to be the provider and the protector of your people by any means necessary? So this is what we're going to be talking about. Yeah. Not another Black Messiah review. Not another Judas and the Black Messiah review. Have y'all really got it yet? I'm not talking about the movie when I do the review. I'm talking about us. This is us I'm talking about. This is real life, living, actions, decisions, and consequences. I'm talking about us. Be one, be you, be great, be true. To thy own self, be true. Because we all be Malcolm X. I am Malcolm X. You are Malcolm X. We are Malcolm X. See how it works? So yeah, we're going to use this Trojan horse movie, the Judas and the Black Messiah, to talk about black people and our rightful place in the world, and to remember the righteous ancestors who made the ultimate sacrifice. So today is Brother Malcolm. Today is the 56th anniversary of the state-sponsored assassination of our dear brother Malcolm X. Y'all call him Malcolm Little, Detroit Red, A.L.L, A.L. Malik, Shabazz. I think I got it right. Y'all can correct me because people love to correct a black man. Matter of fact, Malcolm used to go to that bookstore, the Michelle bookstore up in Harlem, I believe. The proprietor, Mr. Mashal, would lock up Malcolm in that bookstore so he could study overnight, get ready for debates. You know, Malcolm was a world-class debater. He was on the Norfolk prison debate team. That's a legendary debate team. They existed from 1933 to 1966. They won 144 wins against the best Ivy League schools in the Northeast. They won 144 victories and only lost 8 times against the likes of Harvard University, and other Ivy League schools. That's why Malcolm was so great at debating, man, because he got prepared for that in prison. And because he was on that Norfolk prison debate team. Like they're like the Lakers or the Yankees or the Celtics or the Cowboys or the Patriots or the Tom Brady's of their time. There was some badass. They didn't make a movie about that. They made a great debaters movie with Denzel. Hey, make a movie about Malcolm being on a prison debate team. That's what I'm saying. Y'all think that these movies are supposed to be the end all be all. How can you fit a complex life like Malcolm X in just 3 hours and 25 minutes? How can you tell the story of Fred Hampton Sr., who lived to be only 21 years young, in 2 hours? You can't. Stop letting Hollywood dictate the terms and existence and validation of our people, man. There is no excuse why we can't make our own movies. We got smartphones here, got all this technology. We could tell our own stories because everything is about storytelling. It's about the art of storytelling. You don't need all of the bells and whistles and a big Hollywood budget to tell our story. There are so many stories that we need to tell, and y'all keep on waiting for white folks to do right. It's like y'all waiting for them reparations. But what we try to do at We All Be is give y'all the history, the receipts, so y'all can make the claims for reparations. Stop, like, going blindly into stuff, being emotional and caring about what white folks think, if you right or wrong, or you look right, or you look good, or whatever. When you stop caring about what other people think about you and what you do, especially them white folk y'all love so much, y'all will be free. We all be free when we start caring about ourselves first and forget about what other people say or do. You can't control other people thinking. Like what I'm doing right now, I'm offering the evidence that y'all need to go forth and making these claims. And that's my job. I don't really care about you agreeing with me. Don't really care if you subscribe or unsubscribe at this point. I don't really care. Like, it really took a lot for me just to do this live. It really had. I'm dealing with stuff. It takes a lot, man. I'm just dealing with this snowstorm, this geo-engineered snowstorm that dropped on Tennessee and parts of the country that won't go along to get along, like Texas. Texas, y'all can't talk about no secession when y'all can't take care of your power grid. You know what I'm saying? You need a power grid, be able to run your own republic or country. So Big Daddy Biden, he spanked that ass. Big Daddy said, "Oh, I'm gonna go Calvin Candyland on that ass." He went Calvin Candy on Texas, man. He beat Texas like a runaway slave, man. I love Texas, but there's y'all keep on thinking this stuff is all natural. Like a lot of people, they have their hair. They think it's all natural because they buy it. It's your hair because you brought it, right? Well, whatever. But there's a lot going on. Bread and circuses. So, trying to warm up the dais here. Get a crowd. Got a lot of information to go through. I was thinking about doing another show tonight. I don't think I'm going to do another show tonight. I don't know yet. I got to see how I feel about the end of this show. People don't really get it. The curse I have, I make it look too easy. That's my curse, that I make the stuff that I do look too easy to do. And if it was easy to do, then everybody should be doing it, right? And I really care about giving out new information, not retreading all the time old stuff. There's a lot of new stuff. Like, Harry Truman once said, the president, he said, the only thing new is the history that you don't know. That's the only thing that's new in this world. It's the history that you don't know. So in this segment, I'm going to retread over some old themes and stuff. Because people always want to say, well, Brother Ron, man, black people got to take responsibility, and, it ain't the government responsibility to take care of black people. Black people got to be with black people. I'm not interested in working with all black people. All skin folk ain't kinfolk, and all kinfolk can't be getting along. Family feuds and all that stuff. If everybody can have their family feuds, the Hatfields and McCoys, and white folks fight among each other all the time. Black folks think they supposed to be better than white people. You think you supposed to be above them in their system? If we was really superior, we wouldn't even be trying to partake or submit ourselves to this BS system they call civilization. Because we created civilization, but we forgot that we knew what we knew. So let me remind you today, or tonight, rather. And we'll get on with the on. Let me read a disclaimer. Let me see, it's about 8 minutes after 8 o'clock Central Time. Let me read a disclaimer and we'll get on right into this thing. Thank you, Mary Short. We love you, Matt Lay, for the donation. Let me read y'all out. Sometimes I get lost in the sauce. Thank you so much. Thank you. I need that for gas. And the real Dana with the data. Thank you for showing me love, Sister Dana. With the data. We love you madly. Really enjoyed this show. Enjoyed Brother Michael Sneed. I look forward to having him on We All Be. So Sister Dana, thank you for the support and love and checking in on me. I appreciate it. Yeah, so we're going to talk a little bit about Malcolm because, it's a thing, that movie that Spike Lee did about Malcolm X, right? That movie that Spike Lee did about Malcolm X. As much as I loved that movie when it came out, I remember seeing the movie when I was 12 years old, and I brought the book, The Autobiography of Malcolm X, allegedly by Alex Haley and Malcolm X, but we now know that Alex Haley did not even write Roots, let alone Malcolm X. It was his editor from Playboy, Murray Fisher, who wrote the Malcolm X book for Alex Haley. And then we also know now, or we should know, that Alex Haley, took the story for roots from the book The African, written by a white man named Harold Corlander. Matter of fact, Harold Corlander and his people took Alex Haley and his people to court, and Alex had to settle for a large settlement to Harold Corlander and his people. It's back in the 70s. You can take a look. It's all online. You can find all this information online. And you could Google all this. Whatever you do, DuckDuckGo, Google, Bing, whatever. This stuff is out there for the public. It's been out there for decades. Even your boy Skip Gates know about this. You know. So, but it is what it is. But this is why we do these things. Yeah, I know y'all know about the situation with Roy Wood, the undercover NYPD officer who had a deathbed confession. He actually wrote this deathbed letter back in 2011. He wrote it in January 2011. He talked about how the FBI and NYPD conspired to kill Malcolm X. We're going to get into that because now, wow, we just had this movie, The Judas and the Black Messiah, that shows the government's hand. And not just that movie, but you had the civil lawsuit, the civil trial that lasts about 12 or 13 years, where the families of Mark Clark and Fred Hampton Sr., as well as the survivor of that December 4th, 69 raid, were awarded $1.85 million back in 1982, which is really not enough. You think about all the stuff that was lost December 4th, 1969. And over the generations of Black people, the state-sponsored terrorism war against Black people in terms of us having self-determination and a little bit of respect. But it came out that and also Senator Frank Church from Idaho, he had his church committee hearings in the 70s that exposed the counterintelligence program and all the abuses that it occurred against the American citizens, in particular people like the Black Panther Party, like Fred Hampton, like Martin Luther King Jr., people like that. So this is like a long paper trail of stuff that has been out there for decades that we, the people, can access to make the proper claims as ADOS, FBA, Aboriginal, Black folks from here. We are do our reparations. If we just do our due diligence and research the history. You know, with Johnny Cochran, before he died, he was working trying to make the case for reparations for Black people. He was working on that Black Wall Street stuff. And then he unexpectedly died of some type of brain illness. You know, not unexpectedly, they gave him something. Like, you know, I remember when I look at a news interview on C-SPAN, and Kwame Ture, y'all know him as Stokely. Some of y'all know him as Kwame Ture, but he was a freedom fighter. But he truly believed that the government gave him that package that he couldn't get rid of, the package he didn't want delivered to him, that cancer package, and they probably did. If you think about with Donald Trump, when he was at the Bethesda Naval Hospital late last year, that's the same place where they knocked out the first Secretary of Defense, James Forrestal, who was a part of Majestic 12, the UFO stuff. Now they talking about UFOs and aliens and these monoliths appearing. People, UFOs are real. I'm not interested in proving to nobody. It's like what Denzel said, it ain't what you know, is what you can prove, right? Alonzo Harris said in Training Day, it ain't what you know, is what you can prove. But the stuff is real, you know. And James Forrestal was a part of Majestic 12. Look up Majestic 12. And he was the first Secretary of Defense. He was anti-Israel. He was anti-Zionist. And for his troubles, they threw him out the 16th floor window of the Bethesda Naval Hospital, which is now known as Walter Reed, whatever medical complex. But back in the day, it was known Bethesda Naval Hospital. They also got rid of Senator Joseph McCarthy, you know, from the 50s. That guy who's leading the witch hunt against communists in the government, which we now know that were communist sympathizers, spies in the government at that time. He was correct, but he went to Naval Bethesda Hospital. So I guess he had something wrong with his knee. Then he ended up dead. And he was dating the Kennedy daughters, man. He was very popular with the Kennedys. He, you know, Papa Kennedy loved Joseph McCarthy. He dated some of his daughters. He was the godfather to RFK, Robert Kennedy's first child. His daughter, who was the lieutenant governor of Maryland at one point, and who lost her daughter and grandson in a horrific drowning last year, right at the beginning of all this COVID mess. So it is an interesting. Then you got Frantz Fanon, Mr. Wretched of the Earth, right? The Pan-Africanist thinker. He died at Naval Bethesda Hospital. He had allegedly leukemia. But y'all, think about that. So Trump knows all about this. Then they did the JFK botched autopsy at Bethesda Naval Hospital. So you think Donald Trump gonna stay there after he knew the history of what they have done to VIPs there? They're trying to send Reagan when he got assassinated. Almost got assassinated. They were trying to get him to the Naval Bethesda to finish him off, allegedly. But somebody had enough sense to send him to George Washington University Hospital, which was closer. So they were actually trying to get rid of Reagan when he got assassinated, when they were trying to assassinate him. And the guy who shot Reagan, his family were close family friends of the Bushes. He was a friend of one of George H.W. Bush's sons. The guy who allegedly shot Reagan, was it John Hinckley or something like that? And I think he's out of the mental ward, whatever. He's been out for several years now, if I'm not mistaken. So, Ron, we ain't gonna talk about Malcolm X. Okay, I'm gonna get to Malcolm X, but the undercover guy, Roy Wood, who was a black man, he confessed back in 2011. He was, he had cancer. He thought he was gonna die in 2011, but the letter came out recently. The daughters of Malcolm X had a press conference. It was formerly known as the Audubon Ballroom, I believe, which is now known as the Malcolm X and Dr. Betty Shabazz Center, where he got assassinated, something like that. But the letter was revealed to the people. I'm going to read that letter for us, for posterity. We could talk about it. But, Judas and the Black Messiah showed how the government got involved in the state-sponsored assassination of Fred Hampton. Was proven in the court of law. Like I said, you had the paper trail, from the church committee hearings. Then Dr. King. I always tell people, get a hold of this book, read The Plot to Kill King by Dr. William Pepper, who was James Earl Ray's lawyer, but also he was a friend of the King family. He knew Dr. King personally, and it came out in civil court once again. Like when the Fred Hampton case, they had a civil trial that lasted almost 12 to 13 years. Also with the King thing, came out in civil court in Memphis, Tennessee, that on December 8th, 1999, that the government was found complicit in the assassination of Dr. King. And the rifle or the gun used to kill Dr. King could be traced back to the FBI. So you got the FBI fingerprints on all of these assassinations of black people, of black men who were leaders in their community, trying to do justice work for their people. So the FBI has its fingerprints all over these assassinations of Fred Hampton Sr., Malcolm X, and MLK. Matter of fact, the National Secretary for the Nation of Islam, John Ali, was FBI. Where's the movie about that? The guy who was responsible for the communications between Malcolm X and Elijah Muhammad was FBI, and he's still around. As far as I know, he was around when the dude did his documentary, Who Killed Malcolm X, but it's stuff that you should know anyway. Carl Evans is the book y'all should read. Carl Evans, The Judas Plot. Is it the Judas Plot? The Plot to Kill Malcolm X. It came out in the early 90s after the movie came out by Spike Lee. He talks about all this. He names the names and everything. So this been public knowledge for almost 30 years. Yet our people, we wait for white folks to tell us when to care about things. We're not important unless white people kill us. It's like Malcolm's not important because y'all think black people killed Malcolm, that they were the masterminds behind killing Malcolm. And we'll talk about that. But black folks did play a hand. Just like black folks played a hand in neutralizing Marcus Garvey, black folks did play a hand in neutralizing Fred Hampton Sr. So we can't dismiss that, but you got to look at the bigger picture. Who truly benefits from the removal or the death of the king? Who really benefited? Did William O'Neill really benefit that much in comparison to what he did for the state? I mean, you look about Judas. Judas is interesting because people think Judas is a traitor. I don't look at Judas as being a traitor. It's like if you go back to Judas and Jesus, if Jesus is the Son of God, if he's all knowing and got them gifts, he already knew that Judas was going to do what he did. He already knew that. That was part of the prophecy. It's part of the plan. So to me, and Judas killed himself afterwards. He got his 30 pieces of silver, just like William O'Neill got his $300, did in Fred Hampton. And then what he ended up doing, nearly, wow, you think about it, almost 21 years later, he kills himself at the age of 40. Allegedly running across the Eisenhower Expressway, getting hit by a car or cars. Who knows? But just like the Judas in the Bible, he commits suicide. So even if you look at a revolutionary suicide, Fred Hampton Senior knew he was a marked man. But he did what he did anyway. It's like with Huey Newton, when they talk about revolutionary suicide, and y'all should read that book by Huey P. Newton called Revolutionary Suicide. It's like, you're not being suicidal, but you can't be afraid to do what is necessary. Sometimes that means putting your life on the line for something that's worthwhile. Like Dr. King would say, or to paraphrase Dr. King, if a man ain't willing to die for anything, he ain't fit to live. So you got to get in that mind state. So that's revolutionary suicide. So to me, a Judas is not necessarily a traitor. They fulfill prophecy. They do what they're supposed to do. He or she fulfills her role, and then they self-destruct. That's what all good Judases do. Once they do what they're supposed to do, they destroy themselves. So you see how it works. So anyway, that's how I look at it, man. I don't look at it as, oh, it's the traitor. I said, Malcolm knew when he was in the nation that they were very much compromised by police. Malcolm did a speech about how they going to say we're going to be plotting against the government when the Nation of Islam is full of policemen. So I mean, it's a fascinating world that we live in, man. It's a fascinating time to be alive, to think about these type of things. But I'm a thought provocateur, so I'm gonna play some clips as well. But let me read a disclaimer. Knowledge is the currency of the universe, but thank y'all for y'all support and Dues Nation. So like disclaimer, the views expressed by host and guests on the We All Be TV platform are not the official views, opinions, beliefs, or perspectives of We All Be News or the We All Be Group Incorporated. We All Be News is an organization that thoroughly believes in supplementing the information narrative that is usually supplied by the corporate news entities with those viewpoints and expressions which may be marginalized or ignored for a plethora of reasons. We are about informing the general public on alternative perspectives as it relates to news and information, and letting the general public be the ultimate judge in deciding on how to use said information. Informed citizens are responsible citizens, and we thank you kindly for your support. So I think I warmed y'all up a little bit. There's so much to talk about. Okay, let me see. Well, here how I feel about that. Y'all remember the JFK assassination? This is an interesting point. How do you trust them to do the right thing? It's their people, it's their own people being accused of this crime. I mean, not their people like individuals, but their organizations are being accused of this crime against humanity. Not just the violation of Brother Malcolm and his human and civil rights, but this is a violation against humanity. This is a violation. It killed this man in front of his family. His wife was pregnant with twins. This man has 6 daughters. They killed them in front of his family. And you asking these devils to investigate their other devils. How can you qualify the devil to give you mercy when the devil is only qualified to give you more hell? This is insanity. This is psychological insanity that Black folks ask these people, that we as Black people are asking these wicked, filthy, thuggish institutions to be accountable and transparent. They know what they people done did. There ain't no investigation needed. It's been done. The evidence is out there. It's been out there for decades. It's ridiculous. I remember I talked to Malcolm X's nephew, Ronell Collins, whose mother was Sister Ella Collins. She really was like a mother to Malcolm X. When his mom became institutionalized, she took him into her Roxbury home, which is now a historical landmark. I believe it's named like the Ella Collins Malcolm X house. So I talked to his nephew from time to time. Sometimes I forget that I'm talking to his nephew. Sometimes he sounds like his uncle Malcolm X. But he talked about even when that firebomb incident happened to his home, that the FBI came back and got some boxes of some of his letters and notes and stuff from the curb, right? The family was just throwing stuff out. They had a box full of Malcolm X's speeches and notes and all this stuff. There's letters or whatever. He said that decades later, the FBI returned that box they took from the curb back to the family. Malcolm had stuff on him that was put up for auction. That day, he was supposed to announce the people that was trying to kill him, allegedly. I believe Gordon Parks, the famous Gordon Parks, that Gordon Parks was given some information by Brother Malcolm as well concerning that. But it's a strange, family. It is very strange. I don't trust these folks to do the right thing because it's been proven that Malcolm's chief bodyguard, Gene Roberts, was undercover NYPD, part of the same Bossy program as Ray Wood, the guy with the deathbed confession. They were both part of Bossy. That's the counterintelligence program within the NYPD. Gene Roberts was Malcolm's chief bodyguard, who was giving him mouth-to-mouth resuscitation while he had holes in his chest. It said Malcolm had 21 gunshot wounds on his person, in his chest, arms, and legs. So how you give this man mouth-to-mouth resuscitation when he got holes in his chest? And also, Gene Roberts was the guy who set up Tupac's mom and the Panther 21. They was accused of trying to blow up historic landmarks in New York City, and Afeni Shakur had to defend herself in court while pregnant with Tupac. Now, this guy, Ray Wood, claimed that he set up some guys that were part of Malcolm's security detail for something similar to that. Like they was accused of trying to blow up some landmarks in New York, and he set them up, not realizing that he was making it easy for them to eliminate Malcolm, according to him. He didn't realize at the time he was making it easy for the law enforcement agencies like the FBI and NYPD, his NYPD, to eliminate Malcolm X. So John Ali, FBI, national security, national spokesperson or secretary of the Nation of Islam. This is not, something that, we don't know for sure. No, this has been proven. Freedom of Information Act, like I said, read Carl Evans. The Judas Factor, that's the name, the Judas Factor. It's called The Judas Factor, that book that came out in the early 90s by Carl Evans, The Plot to Kill or Assassinate Malcolm X. And you got, what's the brother name from Maryland? Y'all know who I'm talking about. His name's Zach Kondo, because he was featured in that documentary last year on Netflix. They really should have just interviewed him, because he's like one of the foremost experts on the assassination. He been studying that for decades, man. Zach Kondo. I think there's that guy named Zach Kondo from Maryland. Y'all can correct me in the chat, so just provide the information. Appreciate it. But thank you, Sister Tasha Thompson, for the Dues Nation. You see, you enjoy the knowledge you share on the show. You enjoy the knowledge I share. Yeah, there's a lot to cover, but let me get some stuff set up, and I'm gonna drop some more gems. But I want to play something. We talk about hip hop, right? The hip hop connection to liberation. Like I would say that the powers that be turn would be revolutionaries into wannabe rappers, right? If you listen to Fred Hampton, the way his speech flowed, how he had that rhythmic flow, he had that charisma. He could have been a rapper today. Just like with Bunchy Carter, H. Rap Brown, them guys was rapping. Stokely Carmichael, them cats was rapping. And something about a black man who got command of the language, they got confidence, know how to, persuade people. That's a dangerous person. See, like today, name a leader right now, a so-called black leader that got those type of abilities. Name one. Al Sharpton. Who's really following and listening to Al Sharpton these days? Jesse Jackson. I mean, he's not the same Jesse from the 80s or from the 70s. He's an older Jesse, more concerned about his health situation right now. I would take it, so he's not it. So name a person, a black man on the scene right now that got that type of sway and pull. Nick Cannon could have had it, but Nick Cannon, he learned his lesson. They spanked him publicly. They put him back in his place, in his sunken place. No disrespect to Nick, but I remember cats were telling me that he said he gonna be the next Dick Gregory. Dick Gregory trying to figure out how long this was gonna last. You know what I'm saying? Because Dick said, man, this man, when it gets the networks and stuff, he want to go down this road. And Nick, now he don't want to go down that road. Ain't no disrespect to Nick, but we got to stop looking at celebrities who get their paychecks from the powers that be, who's dependent on the powers that be for their career and success for liberation, because they not liberated. Colin Kaepernick don't even speak. He's quiet like a church mouse right now. All this stuff going on. You don't hear nothing from Colin Kaepernick unless he's doing a Nike commercial. You hear nothing from Colin Kaepernick. To me, he would never, in that level. Muhammad Ali had the gift. Jim Brown, Bill Russell, Colin Kaepernick, Jackie Robinson, he was conflicted about some things. It is what it is. But what I'm saying is they went through a lot of trouble over the last 50, 60 years to emasculate black men, to destroy black male leadership within the community, within the family household. They went out of their way. But anyway, I want to play something from A. Peter Bailey, who was close to Malcolm. He was one of the co-founders of Malcolm's organization for Afro-American Unity, which was based on the Organization for African Unity. And also he worked with C. Dolores Tucker. That's somebody that Tupac had some animosity towards, but he had, he loved C. Dolores Tucker. He loved Malcolm X. He actually saw Tupac in his first play when he played Travis in Raisin in the Sun. He was there when Tupac made his theatrical debut. This is A. Peter Bailey, a brother from Alabama, good brother, a basketball fanatic, a guy who worked with Brother Malcolm at the end and was there at the Audubon when it all went down. But I wanted him to talk about Malcolm and C. Dolores Tucker and Tupac and gangster rap and hip hop, his thoughts on all that stuff. Had a chance to meet him down at Silver Spring, Maryland back in 2012. So I'm going to play one of the parts of that interview from that meeting. And we'll be right back with y'all. And thank y'all for being very patient. I know I could ramble, but let's take some notes on what I'm saying and do your own research. Don't look at me as the oracle on all things blackalicious or black revolutionary or whatever. And y'all are entitled to your own opinion. But I'm just dropping things. A lot of folks ain't really dropping some of the stuff that I'm dropping even tonight. And I'm not trying to brag on myself, but I take pride in trying to present information to the people. And like I said, my biggest sin is that I make it look too easy to do. But anyway, on to the next. Mm-hmm. He just passed away recently. But what I actually did is, I know at the Bethune, the Boys Institute, and C. Dolores Tucker was the head. I know this thing about hip hop and rap, but I think it's fascinating. I talked to this jazz musician named J.D. Paran, and he did when they did the opera about Malcolm back in the 80s, how they had a lack of support from the black middle class to get the opera. I mean, they were actually going to boycott the play or the opera. Yeah. But he was talking about the profound effect of hip hop. You had rappers like Cash One and Public Enemy and S-Clan sampling Malcolm's speeches. Yeah. And it was they were looking like black people looking for a hero or black youth looking for a hero. And they reclaimed Malcolm from like what you were talking about, how they do our heroes. So we think about how you feel about that perspective.
And what happened?
Corporations.
The rappers who were doing that were pushed to the side.
Exactly.
And up to the forefront came the Snoop Doggy Dogs and the Little Kims and
right.
all those. See, Dr. Tucker, and this is, I want to make this very clear.
Yes.
Dr. Tucker did not oppose rap music.
Right.
She opposed gangster rap music. And she made a distinction between the two. Those brothers you were talking who started were doing that. What happened? Now they still, were playing like in small venues around the country, but the ones who got all the play were the gangster rappers.
Yeah.
The misogynists and the violence and the glorifying drugs and encouraging young brothers to kill each other and all that kind of that nasty negative attitude and things they were expressing. They are the ones who became to the forefront and got all the play.
But like, it's the corporation, like the white corporations.
I don't care, but they were collaborators. They were collaborators. They could have. They didn't have to do that.
We got a choice. But I want to ask, like, the reason why I say that I think is interesting. I think that I look at the Tupac. I know the Tucker and Tupac thing.
Yeah.
But I think like to me, I think it's like I look at the movement. Right. You had intergenerational collaborations. Like you look at the founding fathers. Benjamin Franklin was way older than John Adams and Thomas Jefferson, but they were all equals and peers. Or look at Dr. King with A. Philip Randolph and Adam Clay Powell. They was a little bit older than him, but it's like we have lost the dialogue. Like we let other folks outside our community frame the dialogue, and we should be working. I mean, Tucker and Tupac. I mean, I think Tupac needed a mentor. I think there's a thing he needed a mentor.
Tupac. First time I saw Tupac, a friend of mine named Ernie McClintock. I was living in New York.
Okay.
A friend of mine named Ernie McClintock had a theater company. He did a production of A Raisin in the Sun. Tupac played the boy. Tupac is an unfortunate. This was a very bright, very sharp, very together young brother.
Right.
Who decided to play gangster.
Right.
Because that's what he was doing. Tupac was not a quote unquote street dude. His mother had been a political activist. But he got caught up in that, and then he got to play this, and he ended up getting himself killed. All because of that whole kind of emphasis on that misogynistic violence. Everything is about getting money and bling bling and all that kind of stuff. No, and those brothers, and mainly the brother and the women who went in that, as far as I'm concerned, I don't want to hear nothing about how they deliberately collaborated with our enemies. And why is it an accident that the biggest purchasers of gangster rap were white males between 18 and 25?
Of course. Now, I mean, the entertainment industry was founded on racism in this country. Like,
Well, if you know that, and they making money, man. They making money. I say, yeah, black folks who do things that harm the black community. The biggest money makers of black folks in the early 1900s were the minstrel shows.
Right.
The people who put on the stuff and did all the, they made more money than anybody else.
Like Burt Williams.
It has always been the way to make. If you're gonna put down black folks and make, and act like, buffoons, you always better make money in this country.
Yeah.
Even the names.
Yeah.
Snoop Doggy Dogg.
Oh, little this, oh, baby that.
Yeah, little
right.
this thing.
It's very infantile way. I mean, but it's like they non-threatening, but you got, like, look at, for example, the news. I'll give you your opinion about news anchors and the media personalities in the media, like black males. It's like they're very been emasculated, for lack of a better word. I mean, they're not threatened. Like they will never have a person like Malcolm with a TV show or even doing commentary.
We don't have to choose between them and the Snoop Doggy Dogs. There are a whole lot of brothers out there who are serious brothers who are doing things. So we're not caught up where we have to choose between the ones who have to kind of emasculate themselves in order to get to big anchor jobs,
right? And
the ones who get it in and do this buffoon type thing in order to make money,
right? But people
there's plenty of room in between for us to take care of business.
That's true. There's always a compromise.
You may make $1 million rather than $2 million,
but you ain't hurting.
I got it right here by Mr. Johnson. Johnson. John H. Johnson said, "I don't want to be king of the mixed hill. I want to be king of the black hill." In other words, this whole idea that you can't make no money unless you get white folks. Really? Johnson never put white folks on the cover of Ebony magazine in order to get more white subscribers. And he was the richest black man in America when he died. You know, tell that if you can't make money just selling the black folks, why don't you tell that to all those Koreans, all those Indians, all those Arabs who make fortunes and they don't have not one customer except black people.
We the largest consumers and the largest fools are saying.
So why you go around saying, I got to do this, or I got to do that, or I got to act like this? Because the only way you can make some money is to get white folks. No, that's a lie. And they know it. What they're doing is trying to justify playing the buffoon for the benefit of white people. I'm sorry, I don't care what they say. And making money doing that. Black folks been making money doing that since time immemorial. So there ain't no doubt why they can make the black folks in the early 1900s who made the most money were the ones in the minstrel shows. And as far as I'm concerned, the gangster rappers are modern day minstrels. White people look at them and laugh and be like Amos and Andy. They ain't nothing but Amos and Andy updated. Because they are no threat at all to the system. No threat at all. Now the early ones were, which is why they got them shoved to the side.
Right.
The ones who were using rap as a political weapon to raise people's consciousness and to do. I mean, when I first heard it, man, I was like, "Ooh, man, this is great stuff." And all of a sudden, those brothers were off to the back on the back burner. And the ones in the forefront were the ones talking about, I got to do this and the bling bling and with the crazy name. They were the ones up front,
right?
And who'd be given all the play. It's not. This was done very, very deliberately.
I look at the civil rights movement. I look at the Black Power movement. Malcolm had Max Roach and people like that perform at the rallies. The power of music. I mean, to move the crowd. Sam Cooke, a change going to come. I mean, you look at the consciousness of James Brown. You know what I'm saying? But like, we went from that to, like you said, being co-opted. And
there's always with black people. Anytime you try to organize black people to do anything, you gotta have some music.
Right.
This is in our bones. You got to have a cultural element as a part of it. That's just it. And Malcolm understood this. Martin Luther King understood this. All the great leaders understood this.
A lot of them had backgrounds in entertainment too.
Which is why they had relationships with major music people.
Right.
I read this biography on Lena Horne. Lena Horne says in this biography she was a big Malcolm X fan. I was kind of surprised when I read it. She did.
And she married a white man. I mean, I'm just saying, like you.
She certainly did. Oh, wow. She said in this biography I read, and she described when Brother Malcolm was assassinated, how she broke down in tears and cried. Now, this is in that latest biography of her.
Okay, I'll check it out.
I went and read it, man, and she was Catherine Dunham. You know who?
And she married a white man too, right?
But she was You see what I'm saying? So these people were like quietly,
and Lorraine Hansberry too, right? I mean, they got it. Yeah. Wow.
These people were quietly,
behind the scenes supporting.
Behind the scenes, and he used to tell us that sometimes when he was alive, because we were like young, and we were like in our 20s, early, and we'd be talking about where we just, we just talking about certain people, and he said, y'all be surprised, and he said that y'all be surprised if some of the people who are helping me, behind the scenes, some of the black folks. He never told us names, but I remember him saying that because we'd be like, oh, so the bourgeois, and he said, y'all be surprised. Y'all basically be careful about some of these folks who y'all are,
Wow.
And you find this out, through the years. I began to find out that all the the underground people who were like, I know one of the biggest doctors in New York. I mean, one of the. Find out that his wife was a major supporter of Brother Malcolm.
Wow.
But they were not out there,
Everybody, it's different ways to fight a war. Like you World War II, different theaters and fronts, right?
That's what you have to have. That's what you have to have.
But we such a visual people, like you said, we got to see it to believe it sometimes. And that was Brother A. Peter Bailey. I mean, that's a primary source on Brother Malcolm. And Lorraine Hansberry and Brother Malcolm got the same birthday. They died in the same year. I believe Lorraine Hansberry, the woman who wrote, the playwright who wrote a Raisin in the Sun, I believe she died in January of 65 from leukemia or some type of form of cancer. But she was born May 19th. I want to say she was born, I don't even say the year, I might be off. Maybe it was 1935 because Malcolm was born in 25. Also, that's the birthday of Ho Chi Minh, the guy who led the Viet Cong resistance, who won the Vietnam War. He was born May 19th, like Lorraine Hansberry and Malcolm X. And so it's interesting that history. But A. Peter Bailey, that brother is still around. Wrote a lot of great work. He's a great author, journalist. He helped write the book, The Seventh Child, with Ronell Collins, the nephew of Malcolm X, because Malcolm was the seventh child of his father. And Malcolm was obsessed with the number 7. He was into numerology. Okay, if you think about Brother Malcolm, that 7 number is powerful, because I think he spent almost 7 years in prison. When he died, he was married to Sister Betty, if I'm not mistaken, for 7 years. He used to teach, he used to hold down mosque number 7 up in New York. So that 7 plays a significant role in Malcolm's life, and he was the 7th child of his father. Hence the name of the book, The Seventh Child. But let me see. Yeah, let me see what time it is. I think we're making good on time. Let's talk about some more Brother Malcolm stuff. If somebody said read the letter, I'm gonna read the letter then. Y'all want me to read the letter? I'll read it. And that's for posterity. And I thank y'all for y'all patience and for being interested in the We All Be movement. Let's see what this is. I don't want to show that yet, but that's important. We're going to talk about Pinto. That's Malcolm's good friend over there in Kenya, where Barack Obama daddy, alleged daddy, is from, Kenya. We're going to talk about Pinto. The anniversary of his death is coming up on February 24th. It'll be the anniversary of his death. He was killed 3 days after Brother Malcolm. I know Baba Dick Gregory. He was the guy that brought my attention to Pinto. And sometimes he would say they got killed on the same day. Almost, but close enough, but they were both connected. So I want to thank the ancestor, righteous ancestor, Baba Gregory, for enlightening our people on this, double tragedy. But let me see. I got so many tabs open, so forgive me. I'm trying to find a tab I want. One day I'll get some help, get an assistant producer or something, but it won't be today. But I keep on. I guess the ancestors want me to talk about this, but I want to hold off a little bit before I talk about the Pinto. There's several people I want to talk about that normally don't get talked about. I think it's a gold mine. When people talk about Malcolm X, they usually focus on the usual suspects. It's so many interesting people in this man's narrative that should get some shine. And we're going to talk about some of those people tonight. As soon as I get the right thing open. Okay. But yeah, but this is like my third and final review on the Judas and the Black Messiah. I'm mixing all in with historical stuff. So I know ain't no straightforward review, but y'all definitely should check out the documentary while you can. Let's see. So much stuff to get through here. Let's see what this lucky tab is. All right, there's the tab. Yeah, Brother Malcolm, man, about reinvention, transforming, shape shifting. You know, that's Brother Malcolm. That's our Malcolm. I am Malcolm X. You are Malcolm X. We ought to be Malcolm X. But let me find this letter that was written back in January 25th, 2011 by Roy Wood, the undercover NYPD cat, who said that the NYPD and the FBI collaborated on assassinating our dear brother, Brother Malcolm X, in front of his family. Okay, this is from January 25th, 2011. Now, mind y'all, he lived to November 2020, but he thought he was dying back in 2011 because of some type of aggressive form of cancer. But he said he had pretty good health insurance for him to be able to live longer, almost a decade longer. So let's read it. I, to who it may concern, I, Raymond A. Wood, being of sound mind and body, wish to confess the following. I was a Black New York City undercover police officer from April 1964 through May of 1971. Let me see. I hope y'all can hear me. I think y'all can hear me. I think I'm clear. Let me know if y'all can hear me. And thank you, Brother Walter Wilborn, for the Dues Nation. I appreciate it. Let's see. Okay, y'all can hear me. Okay, good. So I'm going to continue. Let me say that again. I was a Black New York City undercover police officer from April 1964 through May of 1971. I participated in actions that in hindsight were deplorable and detrimental to the investment of my own Black people. My actions on behalf of the New York City Police Department, BOSSI, talking about the BOSSI programs, BOSSI, look at the BOSSI program, were done under duress and fear that if I did not follow the orders of my handlers, I could face detrimental consequences. Presently, I am aging with failing health. Recently, I have learned of the death of Mr. Thomas Johnson and are deeply concerned with that my death, his family will not be able to exonerate him after being wrongly convicted in the killing of Malcolm X. The facts are as follows. April 17th, 1964, I was hired by the New York City Police Department. Without training, I was immediately assigned to the BOSSI investigation unit. My job was to infiltrate civil rights organizations throughout New York City to find evidence of criminal activity so the FBI could discredit and arrest its leaders. After witnessing repeated brutality at the hands of my co-workers, police, you got in parentheses, police, I tried to resign. Instead, I was threatened with arrest by pinning marijuana and alcohol trafficking charges on me if I did not follow through with the assignments. Under the direction of my handlers, I was told to encourage leaders and members of civil rights groups to commit felonious acts. Wow. The Statue of Liberty bombing idea was created by my supervisor / handler. Using surveillance, the agency learned that Bo and Saeed were key players in Malcolm X's crowd control security detail. It was my assignment to draw the two men into a felonious federal crime so that they could be arrested by the FBI and kept away from managing Malcolm X's Audubon Ballroom door security on February 21st, 1965. On February 16th, 1965, the Statue of Liberty plot was carried out and the men were arrested just days before the assassination of Malcolm. At that time, I was not aware that Malcolm X was the target. On February 21st, 1965, I was ordered to be at the Audubon Ballroom where I was identified by witnesses while leaving the scene. Thomas Johnson was later arrested and wrongfully convicted to protect my cover and the secrets of the FBI and NYPD. I have placed my full confession into the care of my cousin, Reginald Wood Jr. I have requested that this information be held until after I have passed away. It is my hope that this information is received with the understanding that I have carried these secrets with a heavy heart and remorsefully regret my participation in this matter. Raymond A. Wood. Wow. And this is actually available on the Daily Mail website, this letter. So that was a black man, right? Just like William O'Neill was a black man. Just like Gene Roberts. That's Gene Roberts' colleague, Ray Wood, you know. So that man been dealing with that guilt, that Judas guilt for decades. It was eating him from the inside out, that guilt of knowing what he did to our dear brother Malcolm and to black people in general. So nobody escapes this world alive. You might struggle and strive, like Hank Williams said. I never leave the world alive. Never leave this joker alive. But yeah. So that's the FBI. That's J. Edgar Hoover's FBI, the man whose name is on the FBI building. To me, that's worse than a Confederate flag or a statue of Robert E. Lee or Nathan Bedford Forrest to have that man name on the FBI building. So the Statue of Liberty plot, I talked about how Tupac mom, Afeni Shakur in the Panther 21 was framed by the government utilizing Malcolm X's chief bodyguard, former bodyguard, Gene Roberts as a guy to set them up. So I guess they do that plot all the time. The Statue of Liberty plot, to blow up the Statue of Liberty. Think about what they do. These people are wicked. They evil, they filthy, they disgusting. And yet, here we are talking about, well, I hope that the Manhattan DA would investigate what happened. They already knew what happened. They approve of what happened. When Malcolm would have his rallies at the Audubon, it would normally be three dozen police officers at the Audubon. Not only did he have his own security detail, you had a strong NYPD presence at these rallies that Malcolm would have at the Audubon. At least 3 dozen police. That day, there was nowhere to be found until after he was shot and killed. They were nowhere to be found. Just like with Dr. King. When Dr. King used to come to Memphis, he had an all-black Memphis police security detail. I have interviewed the guy, Captain Jerry Williams, who was the black man at the Memphis Police Department who was responsible for organizing personal security for Dr. King. The last couple of times I think he came, he had none of that protection. And the police was like blocks back from the Lorraine. So everything was in place. So this is what they do. So this is a state-sponsored assassination. There's no need for investigation. You got enough of the paper out there to follow. But do they got the heart and the will and testicular fortitude to do the right thing by the people, not just by the family of Malcolm, but by black people, by American citizens who demands ethics, transparency, and accountability? Do they have what it takes to do the right thing? I say no, because they don't respect the American people, and particularly black people, foundational black Americans, ADOS, Aboriginal, whatever you want to call yourself. You black people from here, the black folks from here, they do not respect. They do not respect us because we do not demand that they respect us. And we disrespect ourselves every day by allowing this type of disrespect from these institutions to continue. So, yeah, y'all can read that at the Daily Mail. Y'all can just probably type it up, Ray Wood, deathbed confession, Malcolm X, and it'll pop up somewhere. So, yeah, Black History is every day. I mean, but think about it. We all working for the devil. Like Dick Gregory said, you can't get mad. We've been dropping bombs all over the place. And when it's time to pay up, when they drop bombs on us, those bombs don't discriminate. It is what it is. If we're paying taxes to send drones to kill people overseas, and then why y'all get mad when they decide to strike back? We just as guilty as the politicians and the military for doing that, because we provide them the resources. We pay taxes into this filthy system. And when it's time to get payback, God don't discriminate. God don't make no mistakes. You blowing up people at their weddings and stuff. You know, that's despicable. We're a bunch of hypocrites. If we think that we don't supposed to get any type of touching by anybody. All this BS that we spread across the world. And I'm saying we because we guilty, because we have not done anything to intervene. We have not done anything to intervene. And our people are so scrambled in the mind. And that's another thing I want to say too. And I'm gonna stop doing all this preaching right now. But if y'all love Fred Hampton Sr., check out the works of his master teacher, Dr. Bobby Wright. Y'all go do yourselves a favor and Google or YouTube search Dr. Bobby Wright. That's B-O-B-B-Y Wright, like the Wright brothers. Y'all know that the Wright brothers went to school with Paul Laurence Dunbar, right? The Wright brothers went to school. The guys who invented the airplane, they went to high school with Paul Laurence Dunbar, the great poet and intellectual. They had a business to go. They did some business together. Y'all can just research that. I'm not going to talk about it on the show, but I just want y'all to know that, because Paul Laurence Dunbar, we don't even talk about Paul Laurence Dunbar anymore. He's brilliant. He was brilliant and was misunderstood by his own people. And there's another thing y'all should check out on Amazon Prime, a movie called The Black Emperor on Broadway. It talks about the true story of Charles S. Gibbon. He's one of the top actors, black or white, on Broadway. He helped bring to life the role of Brutus Jones in the play Emperor Jones by Eugene O'Neill. And it talks about his career and his struggles with that character. Like, he confronted Eugene O'Neill. Eugene O'Neill is one of the top playwrights of all time. He's one of the greatest playwrights in American history. But he was a drunken Irishman too. And his father was a great thespian. And but he made his own legacy. But it shows how Charles Gibbon would confront Eugene O'Neill on the use of the word nigger in the play, because the use of the word nigger was very prominent in the play. And so Charles Gibbon, who was a black man who came up through the minstrel show, who had the word blackface, he was from Richmond, Virginia, was born there back in 1878. I want to say, I ain't gonna say what his birthday. I think his birthday was November 20th, 1878. But y'all can look that up. Charles S. That's his middle initial, Gibbon. Gilpin. He will confront Eugene O'Neill because he would change the use of the word nigger. He would replace it with Negro or colored or something like that. And Eugene O'Neill, like any playwright, will be mad when you don't honor his words in his play. Why are you going to change it up? So they will get into confrontations about it. This is a black man back in 1920 talking down to this prominent white man. You understand? Talking down to the white man. Said, look, man, you going to tell me what to say? This is my character. I made him who he is. And then Paul Robeson will make it famous as Emperor Jones. Like the 1933 movie, it starred Paul Robeson because by 1933, Charles Gibbon was dead. He died in 1930. He was just 51 years young, but he basically drunk himself to death. You got to think about the stress of being a black man or being a black person back then, dealing in that type of environment. But he stood his ground with Eugene O'Neill. But he actually made that character what it was. I mean, when he performed 500 times on Broadway. And when he first opened that character, the Emperor Jones, because basically Emperor Jones is like a monologue, right? It's just him talking. You got some supporting actors in different acts of the play, but it's basically just a meaty role for a actor to show their craft, to show their skill. And what was unique about it is that normally back then, white folks were blacking up to play those roles for black people. Like in The Birth of a Nation, it was white folks in blackface. They were trying to portray black people in a horrible, negative light. But for this case, I mean, Charles Gibbon was able to get that role as a black man. He didn't have to blacken up. He could just be himself. And he was like one of the top actors and thespians in the country, won all these awards, including an award from the NAACP. He won, I think, a Spingarn medal, I think, back in 1921. So anyway, y'all should check out that. That stuff was crazy. And Eugene O'Neill, his daughter married Charlie Chaplin. No, yeah, the Tramp, D. Charlie Chaplin, Chaplin. I'm saying Charlie Chaplin. Chaplin is Chaplin. Charlie Chaplin. Yeah, United Artists, the Tramp. He married her when she was 18. He was about, I think Charlie Chaplin was 54 years old. It was like a scandal. Cause I think he would mess around with her when she was under 18 at one point. But she ended up having 8 kids by this dude. Charlie Chaplin ended up having 8 kids in his 50s by this woman in his 50s and 60s. I think Charlie Chaplin lived to be 77 years young. He died in Switzerland. And I think she lived to be 66, if I'm not mistaken. And but that's interesting. Eugene O'Neill and Charlie Chaplin connected through the blood. That's interesting. But anyway, I know I got off, but check out The Black Emperor on Broadway on Amazon Prime. Yeah. All right, yep, that's true. Joe Spingarn was a spy. Matter of fact, the person who took over for Tuskegee after Booker T. Washington, Robert Moulton, was a U.S. Army intelligence spy. And that's how they got the Tuskegee program, the Tuskegee experiment. He was there when they initiated the Tuskegee experiment back in 1932, and he retired from Tuskegee in 1935, and he died in 1940. That's Robert Moulton. He was the guy when Nurse Rivers and then got that Tuskegee experiment off the ground. So yeah, a lot of them were spies, man. That's nothing new. A lot of people are, even with this movie, like the Judas and the Black Messiah was interesting as you look at. I saw an interview that Bobby Rush recently did on the Griot about the movie. He was singing the praises of the movie, But what I don't understand, Bobby, if y'all could save Emmett Till House and make it a historic landmark, how come you can't save the Hampton House, man? If that's your homeboy, that's your comrade, y'all taking pictures together, y'all posing like y'all bosses. This man lost his life at 21, been dead for over 50 years. You see that his family and the organization is struggling to maintain his childhood home. Bobby, with all due respect, how come you can't get no money, no government funds out there to those people to preserve this man's house, his childhood home? I mean, one about Bobby Rush, because Bobby, he did a Griot interview. He was in poor health. I knew he had like a cancer scare, like a saliva gland. He had some type of saliva cancer, and they had to do some surgery on his jawbone. Like that Ebert guy, it's not like Roger Ebert, when they had to remove his jaw, whatever the hell he was going on with him. And he had he was talking, it's not to that point, but it's like he was struggling with his words. I don't know if he's been very sick lately or whatever. He just got married not too long ago. His wife died several years ago, and he got remarried to another minister. I didn't know he was a preacher. But my thing, Bobby, how come you ain't doing right by your boy? Don't you supposed to be your brother's keeper, but not found out that Bobby was in the army? I'm not saying that, but I think it's interesting. He was in the army before he became a Panther. That don't mean nothing because, Geronimo Pratt was in the army. He was decorated Vietnam War veteran. And look what they did to Geronimo Pratt. They put him in prison for almost 30 years for something he didn't do. And Geronimo Pratt was the godfather to Tupac. And I didn't know till recently that his great niece is Kyla Pratt. He used to be on that show on UPN. UPN with that guy Flex. They had that show where where she played his daughter. Kyla Pratt. That's her great uncle, Geronimo Pratt, and they look alike. You look at their pictures side by side, they look alike. So that's interesting. So I'm not saying that, I'm just wondering because like in that Panther organization up in Illinois and Chicago, when I read Roy Mitchell's, the FBI handler who handled William O'Neill, they say he had 9 informants in that organization. And so it was not just William O'Neill, he had 8 other informants in that organization. And I would classify William O'Neill as an agent provocateur. He's not just an informant giving information. He actually a person that is disrupting the narrative and making things happen that led to the demise of Fred Hampton and Mark Clark. So he was an active participant in their assassinations, in their murder by the state. So he's not just a person giving out information. He's an actual person that's provoking situations to create an outcome where people are losing their lives. Just like that George Sams character that was portrayed in the movie. He's going around different Panther safe houses so they can allow the police to raid these places and to violate these people's civil liberties. And he's working for the government. killing folks on the government payroll. This ain't nothing new. These people are filthy, filthy people. And yet we are told to respect these people, but they don't even respect their own laws. They go around and trapping people and stuff like that. It's despicable. But let me talk about Pinto. Let's talk about him. It says, the ancestor want to be acknowledged. Man. It is so much stuff to ponder. But I'm trying to get this stuff like within a reasonable time. Thank y'all for being patient. So much to go through, so little time. But write these names down, man. If y'all interested in learning more, because you got this internet for now, we could look at the internet for now and put these pieces together. Okay. Okay, we do it like that. I'm trying to finish out Black History Month strong. I'm trying to do some more shows. I'm trying to have some guests on here as well. I know people been worried about Dr. Randy Short. It's like he's all right. He's doing his thing. I'll be seeing him do his thing now. Supposed to try to reach out to him tonight, but I don't know, man. Stuff take a lot out of you. Okay, so that's Pinto, right? We're going to talk about him. All right. It says, when African-American leader Malcolm X visited Kenya in 1959, he found he had a lot in common with Pinto. They planned a common strategy to deal with the daily humiliation and indignity suffered by both Africans and African Americans. Malcolm X was assassinated on February 21st, 1965, 3 days before Pinto. Their murders are linked in that both were considered dangerous to vested interests. Yeah, Pinto was taken out of here February 24th, 1965 in Kenya. He was assassinated in front of his daughter. Like Malcolm was assassinated in front of his daughters. And these guys were young guys. I believe Pinto was in his 30s, late 30s, if not early 40s. And we're going to get into this. We're going to talk about this. We're going to get deep into this. I got my own take on Pinto. But it's thanks to Baba Gregory for exposing that information, because a lot of folks don't talk about Pinto when they talk about Brother Malcolm and their connection. You know, Malcolm was one of the first Black people over here of prominence to protest the state-sponsored assassination of Patrice Lumumba, the Prime Minister of the Congo. You had the CIA working with the Belgians to get rid of Patrice Lumumba. And what they did was they made sure they got rid of him when they destroyed his body. And the only thing that was left of his body was some of his teeth. And one of the people who killed them kept that teeth or those teeth as a prized possession. Kind of like when they lynch Black men or Black people, like Black men that cut off the Black man's penis, his balls, nose, whatever, fingers, and keep them, they'll pickle them up and keep them as souvenirs. Sometimes they'll sell these Black people body parts in stores like they was at Walmart. You imagine you going to Walmart, you could buy a Black man's penis or ears or nose, like you buying a frozen pizza or something. So this is how they had it in these stores now. So they took pictures, they used the photographs of the lynchings and made them into postcards. There's an exhibit. It's probably still online without Sanctuary that showcase the postcards that were made from those photos of those lynchings. So that's what they did to Patrice Lumumba. They destroyed his body so that the people of the Congo would not have any type of thing to rally around. It's kind of like what somebody told me about Medgar Evers. Medgar Evers was killed in front of his family at the age of 37, but he's not buried down in Jackson. He's buried in Arlington Cemetery, like a national war hero, because he definitely was a war hero. He was fighting a war that was longer than the Civil War, longer than World War II or Vietnam. It's the war for Black folks to get their respect and self-determination. But somebody was saying that it killed the movement in Jackson when they removed this body from Jackson. Like, if they had kept that body in Jackson, that could have been a rallying call for people to get around his body of this martyr to make the movement go stronger and longer. to demand just. I heard this a lot of things, like even with Jimmy Lunsford, when the historian and a radio pioneer Nat D. Williams said that let Jimmy Lunsford's burial place in Memphis be some place where black folks could get some type of pride and be willing to put themselves out there to achieve greatness and black excellence. Now, I'm just paraphrasing all over the place, but something about those bodies being in certain places where people can rally around them and gain strength from. I don't know, it's like a black people thing, some Haitian Revolution stuff, but it is what it is. And I do like hanging around cemeteries for whatever reason. But I like leaving them when I can too. I mean, I'm not dead. But let me talk about Pinto, and then we're gonna move on to some other people that they know don't get talked about in the Malcolm X story. I want to cover some people that don't get talked about, or they should be. Brother Pinto and Brother Malcolm, riders, them two riders right there. True to the game. Riders for the people, man. But let me read something that I wrote about Pinto. On February 24th, 1965, 56 years ago this year, Malcolm X's good friend, Kenyan journalist and freedom fighter P.O. Gama Pinto was assassinated in front of his daughter in Kenya just 3 days after Malcolm. With that horrible act, Pinto became Kenya's first political martyr since independence. Although he was also an Indian, Pinto was a committed socialist and believed in Pan-Africanism. Pinto was an important and trusted member of the Mau Mau, the revolutionary group led by the charismatic Jomo Kenyatta that liberated Kenya from the colonizers, man. The husband and father of 3 daughters was just 37 years old. Pinto was the one who worked with Malcolm X on a strategy to bring the U.S. up on charges of human rights violations against so-called African Americans before the United Nations. So remember that brother, our dear brother, fellow freedom fighter, P.O. Gama Pinto. They don't talk about, we need to start talking about the connection, because people say, well, why Africans are going to care about African Americans? Well, you got a guy that's not only African, but he's an Indian. Yeah, y'all keep on, Kamala don't care about black people. She care about Asians. She's South Asian, right? But here you had a guy who was an Indian that cared about black liberation. And he put that in Malcolm's ear about, hey, man, bring up the United States up on charges of human rights violations against black people in America. And they got Malcolm and Pinto killed. Because what Malcolm was doing, he really was like the president of Black America, visiting these countries in Africa, the Middle East. So the Middle East is really Africa. Y'all do know the Middle East is really Africa, right? They built a damn canal and say, oh, no, it's separated. So it's not, it's Middle East is Africa. But that's another conversation. But, you know, he had Brother Malcolm going around there, being able to sit in on the Organization of African Unity meetings, that how much respect they had for Brother Malcolm. You know, he meeting with Dr. W.E.B. Du Bois, a widow over in Ghana. You got black delegates going to the UN, quoting Malcolm. Like they will say, hey, you talk about the Congo, but what about Mississippi? How you gonna talk about the Congo or South Africa or Algeria, and y'all ain't taking care of black folks in Mississippi? So Malcolm was going there giving these folks talking points and having these folks embarrass the United States on the world stage. and the white folks, the State Department, they were tired of it. They tried to poison Malcolm several times. They tried to food poison him. He had to get his stomach pumped a couple of times. This is a black man. There's a black man from Omaha, Nebraska, by way of Michigan, by way of Boston, you know, all this stuff. Norfolk prison colony. He's upsetting the apple cart. This man has no degrees, but yet he's revered and respected by these people. You know, he even met with Fidel Castro at the Hotel Teresa back in the day. Y'all remember that? You got pictures of that. So Malcolm was committed to doing things. And then I talked to his nephew about some of the things that Malcolm was doing behind the scenes as far as being a delegate. He was doing a lot of interesting things. So the United States had to neutralize Malcolm. And, James Farmer, the guy who was in the Great Debaters, like the young kid who daddy was a professor at Wiley College. Well, he a professor at Wiley College, played by Forrest Whitaker. But James Farmer was one of the freedom riders, the original freedom riders when CORE, I think they were back in the 40s when they did the original freedom rides. So the ones that people talk about, they did the documentary on, took place in the 60s with John Lewis, but I think he was also one of the original freedom riders from the 40s. And he said he believed that Malcolm was killed because he was trying to stop the drug trade from, he was trying to stop the black community from being dumped with drugs, like from the French Connection and stuff like that. Malcolm was trying to get involved in sabotaging the international drug trade. So they had to neutralize Malcolm because some of their biggest markets was the inner cities where black folks live. So Malcolm was trying to put a halt to that, actually. Whereas, also you think about Brother Malcolm, think about the Black Mafia family out of Philadelphia. They was ran out the mosque, right? The Black Mafia family, it was vicious. And a lot of people feared that if Malcolm got into power, that he would clean house. He'll get them guys under control, get them out the way. So Malcolm really was an honest broker, but he was dealing in a filthy business, and they got rid of him. A lot of people, he made a lot of powerful enemies. But you can't tell me that the Nation of Islam were the masterminds behind Malcolm getting killed. The Nation of Islam, Elijah Muhammad did not have the power to deny Malcolm X's passage into France. The French government would not allow Malcolm into their country because they were notified that Malcolm will be eliminated and neutralized. So they sent him back to England. He went on his way back to America. So you're trying to tell me that Elijah Muhammad from the south side of Chicago had the type of power to deny Malcolm X's passage into another sovereign country? Get out of here. But I would say this. Now, Elijah did take money from H.L. Hunt. There's a guy who was a part of the Kennedy assassination and also the MLK assassination. The oil magnate, the oil man, whose son Lamar Hunt was one of the founders of the American Football League, which is now known as the American Football Conference in the NFL, the National Football League. Lamar Hunt started a football team called the Dallas Texans, which is now known as the Kansas City Chiefs. That's Lamar Hunt. His father was H.L. Hunt, a figure in the Kennedy assassination, and also a guy who cut big checks to Elijah Muhammad. I remember Dick Gregory talking about how he was close to Elijah Muhammad. Farrakhan did his eulogy. Y'all think, they were not friendly. Nah, they were friends. See his game, his strategy, listen to Malcolm X's Prospects for Freedom speech from 1965. One of the last speeches he did in his life. He talked about how by him being on the scene, it make it easier for people like Dr. King or Roy Wilkins to get stuff done. Like they playing a game. It's like what Brother Malcolm told A. Peter Bailey. You'll be surprised at the people that support me behind the scenes. The people like the Lena Horns and the Catherine Dunhams and the Lorraine Hansberrys and people like that couldn't be vocal about their support of Brother Malcolm, but they did stuff behind the scenes. They knew their role. Whereas you got black celebrities, they want to be the know-it-all and the front person for everything, not knowing the facts or the fundamentals behind everything. So they want to be out in front, but these folks knew their role. So with that said, y'all need to look into that. And I said, read the book Carl Evans got called The Judas Factor. Check out some of the brother named Zach Kundo, some of his work on this stuff as well. There are people out here that have been doing this work for decades in the spirit of a Steve Coakley, in the spirit of a Bobby Dick Gregory. You need to give them a second look. But like I said, y'all check out Dr. Bobby Wright. Especially he did a lecture back on April 10th, 1980 down in Atlanta. Bobby Wright, this is Fred Hampton Sr.'s teacher. And you cannot tell me he did not predict the future in terms of what's going on with black people right now. That man called it for what it was, and that was 40-something years ago. And he died prematurely at the age of 48, April 6, 1982. Now, the CIA said they rented out the room. According to Dick Gregory, The CIA ran out the Audubon a week before Malcolm was killed. Y'all keep on thinking that black folks got this type of power to do the things in this system. This is their system. We do things at, Malcolm said something about the Korean War. He said about black soldiers, we bleed. You bleed when the white man tell you to bleed. You bleed in Korea when the white man wants you to bleed in Korea, but you won't fight and bleed for your people in Mississippi. We keep on thinking that, all this hating each other, man. Like even William O'Neill, the man was caught up, right? He was a boy. Let's say these guys were young. I know the movie, I don't really care about people talking about, well, Daniel Kaluuya is too old to play Fred Hampton. He's just 31. And Lakeith Stanfield is still in his 20s, late 20s. My thing is, that's nothing new, man. It's like you look at Clueless, right? Stacey Dash was not a teenager when she played in Clueless. She was a grown, sexy woman. But she was able to pull it out. Like Hollywood, they would normally have folks in their 20s or even early 30s play teenage roles. Late teenage. I mean, it's illusion, man. Y'all like that these movies supposed to be the actual factual truth on how everything went down. This is the definitive truth. It's entertainment, man. It's a distraction. You be better off studying on your own the legacy of Fred Hampton Sr. and the Panthers. Just research it, talk to people who were there, and draw your own conclusions. Don't wait for Hollywood to disappoint you. Like the reason why I could enjoy the movie, The Judas and the Black Messiah, was because I didn't have any high expectations for the movie. When you don't have any high expectations, how can you be disappointed? So really, I was pleasantly surprised. It was well done for what it is. And like, it's a 2-hour movie. And a guy lived for 21 years. You ain't gonna tell the whole story. But William O'Neill, he got caught up before he was 20, man. When Fred Hampton died, he was just 20 years old. Not excusing William O'Neill, but you got to understand, our people have been put through a job. We deal with a lot of psychosis over generations, man. Our people are mentally sick. Because how can you explain us thinking we're going to get justice from a system ran by the devil? So, I mean, it's fascinating. But let's talk about another brother. Let's talk about somebody else. I could find these. Thank y'all for being patient. I think we make a decent time. Trying to pull up this stuff. It is so much, but I just want, my thing is like that Who Killed Malcolm X thing. I saw it was well done. I commend the brother for doing what he did, but a lot of that stuff I already knew. Not trying to boast, but it's like when you do actual research and you talk to people and you do your own due diligence. Cause my thing is, I want to encourage people to think for themselves. Don't let these folks force feed you information and call it the actual factual. Like, you don't have to listen to me. You choose to listen to me. And I choose to, provide y'all with information. Y'all can either discard or y'all can utilize. The choice is yours. But that's all I'm saying as it relates to that type of stuff. But okay. Yeah, I think it's probably the one show I'm doing tonight. I be going deep in the rabbit hole, man. Oh Lord. Oh boy. Let's see what we got here. Okay, y'all probably never heard this cat. He should have been mentioned. This is Leon 4X Amir, one of Malcolm X's disciples. This man was found dead in his hotel room under questionable circumstances on March the 13th, 1965. Okay? Leon 4X Amir, a top leader in Malcolm X's Organization of African Unity. It's really Afro-American Unity. It's the OAAU. The Organization of African Unity from Africa was the inspiration for the Organization of Afro-American Unity. But anyway, died under suspicious circumstances after informing the FBI and others that his life was in danger and that he knew who killed Malcolm X. He was quoted as saying I have facts in my possession as to who really killed Malcolm X. Referring to the Chicago headquarters of the Nation of Islam, he declared, the killers are not from Chicago. They're from Washington. He declared, the killers aren't from Chicago. They're from Washington. He had met with the FBI days earlier, and despite being in good health and a martial arts expert, he was found dead at the age of 32. The coroner changed his autopsy report multiple times afterwards. This man was Muhammad Ali's press secretary, from my understanding at one point. This man was beaten up severely a couple times, not one time, and they finally got rid of him. But he just told y'all, like I just told y'all, well, Nation of Islam, look, who's in Washington? Who's in Washington? Where are the headquarters of CIA and the FBI located? Not that far from Washington. In Virginia. Government in Washington. So then he told the FBI, look, he talked to the FBI and look what happened. We found out all this stuff about the FBI with their COINTELPRO program. He went to tell the devils, man, our people, man, Jesus, may he rest in peace, the mighty ancestor. He left behind a whole bunch of kids, from my understanding. So maybe one of them would talk about this. And let me see something. I want to share something else on Brother Leon 4X Amir. See, that people don't even talk about this. I mean, people got these large platforms and we regurgitate the same information. And I regurgitate the same information, but I try to add some more stuff to it, some little bit of spice to everything. Lightening up, not whitening up, but blackening up with truth. Okay, that's Leon. Okay, so I got so many tabs open. I'll be better at this, folks. Thank you for being patient. I try to be interactive with my presentations. Man, I be learning things to trial and error, man. If you haven't figured it out now, if you don't know, now you know. Okay, this is another report about Leon Amir. They say he was guarded at funeral of Malcolm X. So this guy was in fear of his life for weeks before they got him. Sleep agent overdose and death of ex-Muslim. The Suffolk County, Boston, that's in parentheses, medical examiner said that ex-black Muslim Leon Amir, they say he's 31. And, it's funny how they didn't get the ages right for the life of me. They can't get the age of these people right. Died as a result of an epileptic seizure complicated by an overdose of Doridin, a sleeping powder. Amir, a close friend of the late Malcolm X, was found dead in his room at Boston's Sheraton Biltmore Hotel. His death followed by only weeks that of Malcolm X, who was assassinated in Harlem. The father of 7 children, Amir, whose home was in New Haven, Connecticut, had a history of epilepsy. Dr. Richard Ford, medical examiner, said that an autopsy revealed that Amir had a swollen brain and white powder found at the beginning of the intestines proved to be the sleeping powder agent. He ruled out death by violence. Both Malcolm X and Amir, after Malcolm's death, had said that Amir was a marked man for death, and they named the black Muslims as their potential assailants. Amir had been reported to be a prime successor to Malcolm, but Malcolm's half sister, Mrs. Ella Collins of Boston, who announced that she would succeed her brother as head of his organization for Afro-American Unity, denied that Amir was a member of OAAU. Now, he could have been a member. He could have been a member of Muslim Mosque Inc. See, Malcolm started 2 organizations when he left the nation right before he died: the Organization for Afro-American Unity and also Muslim Mosque Inc. for those brothers and sisters that left the Nation of Islam to follow him, because they need a religious organization as well as, I guess, a secular organization. For the folks like A. Peter Bailey, he was not a Muslim. I guess he was a Christian from Alabama. He was Tuskegee, from my understanding. I'm assuming that he was a Christian at that. I don't know where he is, but I'm just saying he had an organization for his secular followers and he had one for his religious followers. Malcolm X did when he died. So that could be possible, what Sister Ella said. And now let me read what I had to say, my summary of the whole situation. March 13th this year will mark the 56th anniversary of the mysterious death of Leon 4X Amir, the great Malcolm X's close associate and the former press secretary for boxing legend Muhammad Ali. Before his death, Amir was severely beaten by alleged members of the Fruit of Islam after he left the Nation of Islam to join the excommunicated Malcolm in helping him organize his respective organizations, Muslim Mosque Inc. or Incorporated, and the Organization of Afro-American Unity, aka the OAAU. After Malcolm's assassination, which happened a month before his own death, Amir went to the authorities, specifically the FBI, to let them know that he had info on who killed Malcolm X. He was adamant that the killers did not come from Chicago, but from Washington, D.C. Not too long thereafter, he was found dead in his bed at the Boston Sheraton Biltmore Hotel. He was only 32 years young and the father of 7 to 8 children. I truly appreciate Brother Abdul Rahman Muhammad's unsung selfless dedication and efforts as it relates to his lifetime God work research for truth and justice, as well as his Well Done Who Killed Malcolm X docuseries distributed by Netflix. It is my hope that he will do a second season that highlights the mysterious deaths of those connected to Malcolm X. The list would include, but is not limited to, Kenyan freedom fighter Pio Gama Pinto, Malcolm's cousin Hakeem Jamal, co-founder of Kwanzaa, along with Ram Malinga Karenga, the Hanafi Muslim, or the Hanafi, I guess the Hanafi Muslim massacre. You know, that's Kareem's mentor, his Jegna. His folks was massacred allegedly by the Black Mafia family in the home that Kareem brought for them in DC. You know, the leader of that, Kareem's mentor, end up seizing City Hall or something. He shot Marion Barry during the siege of City Hall before Marion Barry became the mayor of DC. And also he was an associate of Brother Malcolm. And that's another show in itself that I'm not going to hold y'all to, about the brother who folks got killed by the Black Mafia family, who was Kareem Abdul-Jabbar's spiritual advisor. And the unsung, legendary, pioneering Black media journalist Louis Lomax, the first Black TV news person who was involved with Mike Wallace in helping to produce the controversial The Hate That Hate Produced docuseries that introduced white America to Brother Malcolm and the Nation of Islam. Lomax perished in a one-person auto accident July 30th, 1970 in New Mexico due to possible brake failure. He was ejected from his car and died from head and internal injuries. At the time of his death, he allegedly solved who killed both Malcolm and MLK and was possibly working on either a book or documentary or both concerning the subjects. Sound like they did him like they did Dorothy Kilgallen, who was close to solving who killed JFK before being suicided. Read Carl Evans' Judas Factor for more info. Also, it will be interesting to touch on the infamous Black Mafia, which originated out of Mosque 12 in Philadelphia. They were prolific illegal drug distributors with a La Cosa Nostra connect and a bloodlust that will make Murder Inc., the real Murder Incorporated, blush, man. Malcolm was not a fan of what was going on in Philly and would have probably cleaned house if he succeeded Elijah Muhammad as head of the Nation of Islam. According to people like civil rights legend James Farmer, Malcolm could have been killed because he was trying to stop the powers that be in the international drug trade from exploiting and decimating the Black community in the U.S. with their poison. somewhere, and we got to reclaim that narrative. So, yeah, so y'all learning people to look up. You know, Louis Lomax ain't even talked about today. Y'all concerned about Roland Martin, but if it was for Louis Lomax, there would be no Roland Martins or no Don Lemons and cats like that. But Louis Lomax was a real deal journalist. And I think there was foul play involved in his death. With the brakes went out on him. Like I said, he figured it out. And Brother Bangs is not even a real character. That's interesting, ain't it? I don't, it is what it is, man. But it is, you got to heighten the contradictions. Black people, man, we could be our greatest liberator and our own worst enemy, man. It's all about the programming. And we've been programmed because Malcolm was getting, man, they were chasing Malcolm from the airport, so-called Fruit of Islam. I mean, it's documented. Malcolm was being harassed and chased. Malcolm was in fear of his life, and he said, enough is enough. One day he said, you know what? If I got to die, I'm going to die like a man. I'm not going to run like a coward. Well, Farrakhan is interesting. I never heard nobody, and I got nothing against Farrakhan. I got a Lifetime Achievement Award for him, and I don't think the Fruit of Islam want me to give him the Lifetime Achievement Award. It's just like, hey, man, I've been trying to give it to him about the last 6 years, but it is what it is. But I never seen anybody ask Farrakhan, where was he February 21st, 65? Can y'all, anybody send me any information of anybody on the record, like so-called Mike Wallace? He's dead now, but he interviewed Farrakhan a lot. On anybody. I mean, because when Farrakhan get in the room with somebody, it's like people, it's not even an interview. It's like you just start talking. You ask him a question, and 2 hours later, that's it. But it'll be interesting to know to have anybody ever asked Farrakhan on the record, where were you when Malcolm got killed, February 21st, 1965? Now, some sources claim that he was at Mosque 25, where the so-called shooters originated from in Newark. That was an open secret. I don't know. I wasn't there. But, it's like George H.W. Bush, not comparing them, but George H.W. Bush could recall where he was at and what he was doing when he heard about Pearl Harbor. That happened December 7, 1941. But when people asked him about November 22nd, 1963, he couldn't recall shit. That was 20-something years later. So you recall something that happened 20-something years before, but not later? Interesting. Something that traumatic. I ain't gonna never forget what I was doing and who I was with when I heard Tupac died. I was coming home with my mom, my sister, my little brother. We was almost to our apartment townhouse, or our townhouse, whatever, apartment, whatever you want to call it. And the broadcast was interrupted on the radio. Said, we want to inform y'all that the Tupac Shakur passed in Las Vegas, 4:02 p.m. Pacific. So it was 6:02. It was like a little bit after 6 when we heard the news. And soon we heard that my mom made like a U-turn. She just turned around, took me to Target, which was not that far away from where we live in Hickory Hill. Went into the music section. I brought the last copy of All Eyes on Me that was out there. They might have had some in the back, but I brought the last copy of All Eyes on Me that day, September the 13th, 1996. It's a Friday the 13th. And I played that thing all weekend, looking for coded messages. I was working at Cecil's, the grocery store that was around. It started in Memphis before the Civil War. Now it's no longer in existence, but man, we was talking about, me and the other bag boys were talking about, hey, Tupac knew he was coming. We predicted, because we all thought he was going to survive. We thought Tupac going to make an album. He going to be like Mr. Potato Head, missing parts and shit. But, he going to still be Tupac rapping in a jar or something like that. But he died, and it was shocking to everybody. So I remember buying that last All Eyes on Me CD. You don't forget stuff like that. So I would like to know, anybody got the testicular fortitude to ask Minister Farrakhan, the honorable minister, where were you at? Because I heard what they said, that you were at Mosque 25, but I want to know what you say, brother. because he said, open up the files. And Farrakhan's a Taurus, just like I'm a Taurus, Malcolm a Taurus. We some interested communicators who know how to communicate with the people. But it's not accusing nothing, but I didn't think black folks run a fool's errand when we can't even see that we all been compromised by this wicked system. It's not just William O'Neill. Like, we do stuff to undermine each other all the time. And there's something wrong with us because it only matters when white folks do stuff to us or when we are acknowledged by white people for a lot of us. Black folks kill each other every day. I ain't talking about, no, don't give me with that. Oh, man, I'm not talking about black on black crime. I'm talking about black self-respect and black love. And the lack of love and self-respect that we have among us been programmed. And the lack of knowledge of self, programming. Because for example, I was lucky that I grew up in a household. My grandmother valued knowledge, my maternal grandmother. She had a whole encyclopedia set. This is before the internet. It's like I'm a Oregon Trail generation. We didn't have fully blown internet my whole school life when I was going to school. That came on the end when I was in high school. But my grandma had a encyclopedia set. My mama had an encyclopedia set. Used to go through the thing all day long for hours and hours. But what I love, my grandmother had a Black History World Book Encyclopedia, a special edition Black History World Book Encyclopedia, where I would just be in her living room going through that thing. When I'm in elementary, when I'm 5th and 4th grade, I'm looking up Burt Williams and Medgar Evers, learning about Emmett Till. They're not teaching this in school. Then I talk to the elders. They'll tell me, because they're from Mississippi, they'll talk about Emmett Till. So I knew all this stuff in elementary school. Not because the school was teaching me, it's because I learned that at home, in my grandma's home. She had all that. She valued knowledge. She taught herself how to read by reading the Bible. She was the eldest of her brothers and sisters, but she ran away from home. She eloped with my grandfather, who was a World War II veteran, and they made a life. But what I'm saying is, people say, well, why they don't teach this at school? I said, they not qualified to teach who we are in school. Yeah, I do realize that that's not what they're there for. School is not there to teach you who you are. School is there to help you understand, to acquire the skills and tools necessary to navigate this system. You learn that at home. If your people don't know who they are, then you screwed. Unless you can connect with the village. A lot of people in the village lost their way. They don't know their roots. So this is why I pride myself on doing what I'm doing here, to try to give this information. Yeah, it's good to know about certain things, but it's better to know about who you are, to learn who you are. So, hey, it makes sense that I pursued this because I had an ancestor who was in this field of work. So I'm not doing nothing new. I'm not reinventing the wheel. I'm following a certain type of intuitive blueprint. So that's why you should know who you want to know. But no, I don't hate no black people. I mean, even with William O'Neill, man, it's a sad story because this man had a son. His son got to be in his 30s now, if he's still around, and you living with that burden what your father did, man. You carrying it, you cursing your seeds when you do dirt like that, when you don't atone for the dirt that you do. But I believe by him committing suicide in a way that was atonement, revolutionary suicide. Yeah, I mean, it's well, Sharpton, it's been proven that he was a rat, that he's an informant for the FBI. That's been proven. But yeah, people still love Al Sharpton. It's like what Dr. Randy Short said, we hate our heroes. We love our traitors, but hate our heroes, right? Let me see. Oh yeah, well, Fred Hampton, the hip hop connection, right? Fred Hampton died on December 4th, 1969. Jay-Z was born December 4th, 1969. Pimp C, one of my favorite rappers of all time, he died on December 4th, 2007, but he was born December 29th, like Fred Hampton Jr. was born December 29th. So that stuff is interesting. When you think about it, I forgot to say it in the last two parts. I just want to get that out there on the record, and y'all think about that, because Pimp C was exposed in a lot of interesting things in the industry. Just so happened to die in his sleep. I guess he had sleep apnea allegedly, but who knows? with these things, man, because like a mentor, a Jekyll of mine, told me nobody dies a natural death in show business, man. So let me see. Oh, let's talk about the real Minister Baines. Spike Lee movie was well done, but it did the people a disservice, right? Because people actually think 20 something years later, Malcolm X came out 92. So dang, it'll be 30 years next year when the official debut of the Malcolm X movie with Denzel, one of my favorite movies of all time. Even though I haven't seen it in a minute, Malcolm X one of the movies, man. It's so well done that you never get tired watching it. It's like Goodfellas or Casino for me, or like the Godfather trilogy, even Godfather 3. It's so well done, but at the same time, it's so historically inaccurate. It's ridiculous. And you know there's an agenda because they always been, since Malcolm been put in the ground, trying to undermine his legacy. You know, you got people saying Malcolm X was this and that. Let me talk about that. And I think I'm gonna wrap it up as soon as possible. I get carried away. Like I said, I'm not gonna do another show tonight. I'm just this is woo. See. Yeah, I had a chance to talk to attorney Gregory Reed, the lawyer from Detroit who bid on Malcolm's missing chapters from the Malcolm X autobiography. I'm going to play that right now. He's reading it for us. Who was doing an interview. I'm sure them chapters been published already, but he actually bidded on the missing chapters from the autobiography of Malcolm X. And y'all should know that, like I said, Alex Haley did not write that book. His Playboy editor, Murray Fisher, wrote the autobiography of Malcolm X, and he stole or plagiarized from the African written by a white dude named Harold Corlander for his Roots novel. Think about it. How can, like Dick Gregory said, how can a person write some of the best-selling books of all time die broke? How can he die with his estate owing people money if he wrote some of the best-selling books of all time? It's like J.K. Rowling dying broke, and she wrote the Harry Potter series, right? So anyway, something like that. But let me play this from attorney Gregory Reed, and we'll be right back and try to close it out strong. But this is how he's reading the missing chapters of the autobiography of Malcolm X that he bidded on, kept in a safe in his office, I think in Detroit. And I interviewed Manny Marable. And I remember interviewing Manny Marable, Dr. Manny Marable. He actually, I think he flew to Detroit or something like that, but he was able to look at those chapters, but he didn't give him enough time to actually just look at the chapters, from my understanding. But I interviewed Manny Marable back in July 2007. You know, he died on the weekend before his book came out, his Pulitzer Prize winning Interest in Peace work of historical fiction. There's some people say the reinvention of Malcolm X, but that's another story. Well, let me pray attorney Gregory Reed. Let me see. And thank y'all for being patient and for listening to Brother Ron Hurd. It's been a long week already. Thank y'all.
Yeah, I appreciate that. But what I'm gonna do when I'm gonna sign off, I'm gonna quote from the unpublished chapters for you all.
Okay. All right.
As part of the reading that I did in on his birthday, and so that you would say, well, at least I heard from the unpublished chapters.
That'd be an honor. Yeah.
All right. All right. Okay. One of the things that Malcolm said in the unpublished chapters, what he wanted his life to stand for. First of all, he said, I'm writing this book for the best interests of the Negro and the white man in America. I wasted 7 years of my life in the streets of America. Today, after spending the transitional years of my life in Boston and later Harlem as a human predator, parasite, and leech, for all of which I was inevitably apprenticing for self-destruction in Boston, and afterwards spending the next 7 years in prison. White America vilified and scorned me today in the news media's headlines over radio and television as the infamous black Muslim minister Malcolm X, accused of teaching and spreading the untruth, hatred of the white man among my black brothers. No man has but so much time to do his life work and find his purpose for living. Everything that I do now takes on a sense of urgency. Today I have not the time to write a book merely with the ambition to excite or stimulate some reader's mind. I have, the readers will see, in years, chapters to come, who have lived as closely as it is possible for a Negro to live in the white man and live with the white man and the white woman. In fact, I consider my life to be a perfect mirror that reflects the attitude of the white man in America towards the black man. In part, in fact, it was what I learned of the white man that personally helped me to shape my thoughts, convictions, and positive core values of self-esteem, self-help, self-determination, and self-reliance that totally changed my life to the perspective about him that I have. Only a part of it is the white man in America seen especially seems to be, to me, in an indeed in peculiar and ironic position to accuse of any black man of hatred. I tell the black man the truth of a race that enslaved our race to help build America, his rich country, a man who has raped our black foreparents, mothers, until as a race today we are no longer even black, a white man who in every one of his wars took us to bleed and die with him, and yet for all this has rewarded us with the back of his hand and his table scrapped for 100 years since the Civil War. Now, I give my life to be used to benefit America and humanity, that America will learn that the Negro problem is a challenge to America's consciousness, and that the Negro is America's problem. As long as America ignores the Negro, America will always be trouble and never be at peace. If my life story helped free the Negro mind to do for himself, his family, and his community, it would help America. Then the story of my life would have helped both races in the best interest of humanity to move beyond where we have been, where we are, and be of some use to transform America and the world to make it a better place for us all. Malcolm X, my interim introduction chapter of my autobiography.
So that's Malcolm X in his own words. He made it plain. And they didn't even make the original book for whatever reason. But I think it's probably been published by now. I'm not mistaken. Now, so they got the Malcolm X diary that one of his daughters worked on, along with a respected journalist, that was released several years ago. So you got stuff out there about Brother Malcolm in his own words, making it plain. So it's important that we as Black people reclaim our narrative, create a narrative, and to honor our heroes and sheroes on our own terms and stop letting these folks dictate the terms of how we honor and validate our people. It's BS, and it's time to put that to a rest. But also, I got a couple more things I want to share with you all. I'm gonna try to wrap it up. I didn't, things go by so fast. But I guess I was doing all these interviews for a reason over the years. Let's see. Hey, somebody talk Dr. Manny Marable. I got to play this because Dr. Manny Marable never had a chance to defend his stance on what he believed about Malcolm's sexuality when his book came out because he was already dead for whatever reason. And some people really do believe that the book that was published and released to the people was not necessarily his actual book. That they just did what they want to do, but they wanted to Pulitzer, and he was a blood sacrifice. But I had a chance to talk to Dr. Manny Marable for an hour. So I want to play this thing because I asked him about the sexuality question because there's nothing new. Like, you had the white guy from the 90s named Bruce Perry who wrote a book about Malcolm. He talked about Malcolm's sexuality and other stuff, but he actually interviewed a whole bunch of Malcolm's family, associates, and everything. So he put a lot of work behind interviewing the people who were connected to Malcolm and his story. But the interesting thing about information and data is how you shape the narrative with said information and data, how you interpret the information and data, from your perspective. So that's unique. So this is why we gotta really do our due diligence as people and as individuals to make sure that we could tell our stories in so many different ways and to be stingy with the narrative. Stop letting these folks jack you up and chin check you on how to honor the legacies of our people. But anyway, let me play this Manny Marable clip and then we'll be right back.
I also like you brought up the queer thing. I know I want to ask you this earlier though, in relation to Malcolm, like everybody. Recently, I remember I talked to a professor at the university that I attended, and he was animate. He was a black Muslim himself.
Mm-hmm.
He stood by the fact that Malcolm X was bisexual, and like the letter that came out several years ago with him writing to Elijah Muhammad about his marriage problems, which also included his sexual problems, allegedly written in his hand or typed in his hand.
Yes,
back in '59. I mean, are you going to address that? His sexuality, Malcolm's sexuality?
Yeah, the book will talk about that. What you're referring to originally was a book by an author named Bruce Perry, entitled Malcolm, and with the exception of one source that was actually from Shorty Jarvis, actually the character in Malcolm's autobiography, who was named Shorty. There is some evidence that is presented in this book that suggests not that Malcolm was bisexual, but that he engaged in intimate actions that were homosexual. I think that to a certain extent you have to separate those kinds of actions from an identity that is homosexual or gay. For example, men in prison frequently have what would be called homosexual sex. Does that make them homosexuals? Well, depends, yes and no. Some people would say yes. Other people would say, well, once you leave the prison, then you're in a heterosexual world. What you do in prison really doesn't matter. So, I'm not. I know I don't want to get into a debate about it, but Perry basically, for the most part, cites unnamed sources, and that's not what a historian does. That's what fearmongers do.
Right.
And so I address Perry's charges in the book.
And that was Dr. Manny Marable's take on the situation. I thought that was interesting. Like, if y'all ever read The Reinvention of Malcolm X, he does, I mean, no disrespect to the ancestor, but he does a lot of speculation in his book. If that's actually his real book that he actually wrote himself, there's a lot of speculation and conjecture and all this stuff. And to say that Malcolm would be for Barack Obama in 2008, and when he was going hard against the Democrats in his message to the grassroots, a lot of different prospects for freedom, he was calling out the Democrats, you know, for the last 2 years of his life. He was talking down on them. And so I don't know, man. It's interesting. Like I said, it's like it's not necessarily about the facts. The facts are not the problem. It's like how people interpret said facts or utilize it for their own agenda. So that's interesting because, you know, the Malcolm thing, you talk about Bruce Perry, also Malcolm Shorty Jarvis. That's Shorty, you know, that's the guy that Spike Lee played. You know, he was Malcolm X, you know, Malcolm's Detroit Reds best friend. You know, Spike Lee played Shorty in the Malcolm X biopic. He put out his book before he died about his relationship with Malcolm. And, you know, I don't know, people have their motives, man. Just because somebody rode with you back in the day and they're your family and all, that don't mean they got your best interest, whatever reason. And Malcolm can't defend himself. So it's interesting to talk about that. And also, I want to play something I did with M1 from Dead Prez. Dead Prez, they one of my favorite hip hop groups of all time. So I had, you know, interviewed M1 a couple of times on my show some years ago. And so we talked about Malcolm X, these allegations about from the Manny Marable book. And I want to play his take on it at the time. This is from 2011. His thoughts on Malcolm X, sexuality, on Manny Marable's work and stuff like that. And then, yeah, it's getting late. I don't want to keep y'all too long. The folks who got to start, who could stay. It's so much information I didn't get to. Like I said, I don't do movie reviews like y'all do. People say, well, no, I don't do the 10-minute movie review. And actually, I'm just giving y'all a lot of this other stuff. Because I look at these type of things when a hot movie or something come out. I'm more interested in giving like some backstories behind some backstories and putting things in a certain context, because that's not being done right now on a regular and consistent basis. So I'm gonna play this and I'll be right back. We all be news free Dixie for the 21st century.
Yeah, I like to talk to you too about, reinvention of the self. And you, for me, as an artist, the power of reinvention, affirmation as well. And I was thinking about Brother Malcolm X or Brother L. Malik Shabazz, as you say, how he's currently his image is going a reinvention, so to speak, with the recent book that came out with Dr. Manny Marable about Brother Malcolm, and some revelations, whether they are true or not, is to be seen. I don't know to prove it, but about him. Per se, for example, being having a homosexual relationship with a white businessman while he was hustling, and like having a loveless marriage or having affairs on his wife. And I don't know if you are aware of the book I'm talking about. This came out by the late Dr. Manny Marable, but a lot of people have been making more about the question of Brother Malcolm's sexuality than they are about his politics, about the stuff that he stood for, about the stuff he spoke on. And I want to know, what's your take on all that?
Well, I'm aware. I'm aware of the book. And may this brother who has recently transitioned, may he rest in freedom. Dr. Manning Marable. Mm-hmm. An immense historian and gatherer, an architect of our facts, he was, who was exposed to the chapters of Malcolm. Who the book that we know, the autobiography of Malcolm X, was written by a man named Alex Haley.
Right.
Who at one point, it is known, worked for the Central Intelligence Agency of the United States government. And I mean, we have to be clear on this. You know, this is how he got introduced to Malcolm, was working in D.C., writing an article for the Washington Post, which was meant to be an article that would slander the Nation of Islam. He would developed a relationship with Malcolm, who was then their star student, and then developed that relationship as Malcolm also needed a way to get his thoughts out. And the thing was molded. And let me tell you, there were cut away from this book. And people who listen to this show need to know this. And they were cut away by this, written by Alex Haley, and a lot of it not even edited in the end because the man became deceased before the book came out.
Right.
So at the end of the day, whose truth are we believing here? When someone tells me that Malcolm was a human being, which makes a lot of sense to me, because we all are human beings, with everything that comes with being a human being, all kind of contradictions exist in us. Well, then why wouldn't they exist in Malcolm? So am I saying homosexuality existed in Malcolm? I don't know. I mean, obviously, Dr. Manning Marable has done more research than I have, and I respect the research because of the work that preceded that. However, we got to stop making the man the center and make the message the center. Because when we look at the man, we lose the message. I mean, it's been true about certain revelations they've had about Dr. King, and many of our leadership. I talk about this question all the time. I mean, do you think until we get free, we'll be able to understand totally the question of sexuality? I don't think so. It's tied inextricably with the complications that come with oppression.
Right.
Was Malcolm? I mean, was Malcolm free of oppression? No. He was the greatest fighter of injustice and oppression that we've ever seen, that I know about. But he wasn't free of it. So with that being said, he was subjected to all kind of stuff the same way we were. Why wouldn't we believe? So who cares? I mean, it is important to talk about these relationships, but in the end, does it affect the journey, the revolutionary journey of the person who gave all of us the ability to fight the way that we know? No, it does not. It does not. As a matter of fact, it should inform us more about the insecurities we have about the things that we're dealing with, and know that the struggle does bring us away from our families. And whether he had a loveless marriage or not, that's between him and Betty. And if he did, then it wouldn't be the first time.
Right, exactly. Brother Ewan, when you talking about that, I was thinking about what I read in Brother Huey Newton's Revolutionary Suicide, where he talked about Eldridge Cleaver. Eldridge Cleaver did a very scathing critique of Brother James Baldwin in his book Soul on Ice. And Huey Newton recounts a meeting of Eldridge and James Baldwin. And James Baldwin, I believe, party in his honor, and how they embraced a long kiss or whatever. And Eldridge told him not to tell anybody. But I just think it's interesting why people are more concerned about bedroom politics than they are about the politics of the street, of the hill, and of the world, the geopolitical politics. And I think that it shows us where we at in terms of a generation, where our mentality and where our focus really at is on the wrong things, not on the prize. So I definitely agree with what you're saying.
I agree.
Yeah, I played that, man. That was like 2011. That was like 10 years ago. Head all crazy. 10 years ago, I talked to M1. I talked to him a couple more times. He said when I did that interview with him, it kind of had a falling out with Malcolm Shabazz, the grandson of Malcolm X. He said, man, you don't know, man. Like, you be doing these interviews, man. Your words, your stuff be getting out there, because he said he had some static with Malcolm Shabazz, man. He be resting in peace, the righteous ancestor, brother Malcolm's grandson. But I think they was able to reconcile before he passed away. So, I mean, this stuff is interesting. And I remember talking to Malcolm's nephew, Ronell Collins, who wrote the book, The Seventh Child, with A. Peter Bailey. And, he said this in his interview when he went to go to a publisher. The publisher asked him, do you want to write a book or write a bestseller? And Ronell was kind of confused by the question. He said, well, I want both. He said, no, you can't have both. You can either write a book or you can write a New York Times bestseller. And what he was telling him was that if you want to make money and this book to be a success, you got to put some scandal in there, put some dirt in on your uncle that we don't know about. Like I said, Even Carl Evans addressed the situation about Malcolm's sexuality, whatever, when he was hustling the Detroit Red as a male prostitute. And really, that shouldn't be important. Like somebody said in the chat, it's not how you start, it's how you finish. And Brother Malcolm was not about that LGBTQIA, whatever y'all want to call it today, agenda. His thing was about Black folks being liberated and Black self-determination and Black self-respect. Brother Malcolm was about Black manhood. El Malik Shabazz, I'm talking about that because, you know, he reinvented himself. So maybe Detroit Red did some things, some strange things for some change, but Brother Malcolm was about revolutionary change for Black people, so-called Black people in this matrix. So, you know, it got to be addressed because even I said Malcolm Shorty Jarvis took some shots at Malcolm in his book. Bruce Perry, like I said, the white professor, put that out there. Even Carl Evans, I liked how he addressed it. It was like really short and to the point. So what Manny Marable book was talking about was nothing new. That stuff already been out there in the ethers concerning that situation. But it doesn't, you know, like somebody said, William Styron did the Nat Turner book, you know, the Confessions of Nat Turner. Like people confuse their confessions with the one that Nat Turner allegedly told to a lawyer back in the day before he got killed. So that's what they slick with it. Yeah, no, when Black folks back in the day was going to request the damn Confessions of Nat Turner from the bookstore, they thought they were getting that one from the 19th century, but they ended up giving the one that William Styron wrote. That James Baldwin, brother James Baldwin encouraged that white dude to write that book on Nat Turner. The same James Baldwin who French kissed Eldridge Cleaver, according to Huey P. Newton at his party. You know, read Huey P. Newton's Revolutionary Suicide. You know, Eldridge went hard on James Baldwin in his critique of Baldwin in his book Soul on the Ice, which is well written. Just like James Baldwin threw Richard Wright, his mentor, under the bus to make it. See, like this, white folks are interested because, you know, James Baldwin was a fetish of white imagination. It's like Negroes don't get it. Black people are fetishized by white people. They like to fetishize us. You know, like Josephine Baker, she was walking her pet, I think a pet cheetah around Paris. And she said something to the effect, white folks trying to figure out who's more animal, me or the cheetah. Who's really holding who on a leash? He said, white folks got a funny imagination, and yet we let white folks think they got the right to validate who we are. We allow them. We the parents. We are the parents of civilization, of humanity, and we let the children tell us if we good enough. You know, you see how ridiculous we are in as a people. This is a ridiculous state we are in, where, you know, it's hard to take us seriously, man, because we care too much about basketball and football, bread and circuses, who getting divorced from who. So people say this is not worth talking about, but this is where we at. We at this low vibrational state of mind as a collective. So, but I'm saying with this, even if it is true, it doesn't matter because Malcolm did not die for the LGBTQIA agenda. He died for Black people. Yeah, Eldridge went hard on Baldwin, man. You got to read Soul on Ice. You know, he went hard on Baldwin. Just like Baldwin did to Richard Wright. You know, Richard Wright introduced Baldwin into the literary circles, gave him the connects. So people don't understand, it's like, it's this old saying, if you want to be a master, you got to kill your father. If you want to be a master, you must kill your father. You know, it don't mean always, you know, physically kill your father, but, you know, it's like these metaphors. Like you look at, you know, Richard Wright basically sponsored James Baldwin into the literary circles that he needed to be successful. And once he got to a particular place, James Baldwin threw Richard Wright under the bus. Read some of his critiques and essays. He threw Richard Wright under the bus. And so Eldridge, in order to get where he needed to go, he threw James Baldwin under the bus. It's kind of like you go back to, remember that scene in James Brown biopic with Chadwick Boseman, that battle royale, all them Black dudes fighting each other for the pennies on the ground. You know, the white men were throwing the money on the ground and they fighting each other. You know, the last man standing get all the money on the ground. You got to knock a Negro out. They had him blinded and knocking. That's how Jack Johnson was able to become one of the greatest heavyweights of all time, because when he was growing up in Galveston, he participated in a lot of battle royales where they'll blindfold black dudes. He'd be punching all over the place, last man standing, get all the money on the floor. So this is how they do us as black people. They pit one against the other. Think about this. Paul Robeson. You know who they sent after Paul Robeson to try to take him down? Jackie Robinson. Muhammad Ali. You know who they sent after Muhammad Ali to take him down? Joe Louis. I'm saying in terms of trying to knock him down a peg. Joe Louis donated $1 million to the U.S. government, and they destroyed him with the IRS. The IRS is more lethal than Hitler, than Al Capone. Hell, Al Capone went to prison because the IRS. He didn't go to prison for killing people because he didn't pay them their money. That's the biggest racket going. You got sociopaths scared of the IRS, psychopaths. So I'm saying, but they do divide and conquer. They send out your own, like, you know, Paul Robeson didn't want to go at Jackie Robinson. You know, Jackie Robinson threw Paul Robeson under the bus during a congressional hearing. And Paul Robeson, I'm not going to go that low, man. I know what they doing. Saying, like, you know, it's like they get us to divide and conquer. Our strength is solidarity and unity. That's why you can't have no Black Messiah, because Black Messiah is about solidarity and unity and connecting people. So that's a threat to people that's eating off your misery. You know, so yeah, let's talk about one more character that don't get the shine that he should in the Malcolm X narrative. Yeah, Michael Dyson. Yeah, he sure did. That's what they do. It's like it's a rites of passage, man. It's a ritual. You kill your father, you throw him under the bus, you do what you got to do. It is what it is, man. Think about if you look at John Gotti, you know, he killed Paul Castellano, the boss of his family, without consent from the commission. But he had to do it the way he did it, because Paul Castellano was out there probably gonna get rid of him sooner or later, because they were doing things behind his back that was not sanctioned. Like they were selling drugs and all that. But it's another story. But I'm saying, like, it's not just a Black phenomenon. It's the way that the system worked. The system, you kill your father and you eat your young. Like the old men, they strategize and profit from war. Young people die from war. They get wounded, horribly disfigured from war. But the old men don't even fight a war, but they make all the profit. You see what I'm saying? Like, you know, people join the military not because they patriotic, but because they trying to get a paycheck. You know, you got folks that join the military because they want to kill and rape people and get away with it. You know, people are like, oh, that's not true. Yeah, it's some people like that. They join militaries. And even the military will have some people like that they won't even accept because they too crazy, because they can't control them. You know, you have people in the military. I remember talking to Vietnam veterans and nurses and whatever. They talk about this phenomenon known as fragging. You know, y'all know what fragging is? Fragging is where soldiers kill their commanding officers on purpose, and they call it friendly fire. You know, like you might have a demanding and a demanding officer doing training camp. He said, wait till we go overseas. I'm going to get that in alpha. So you kill your commanding officer. You have some Black soldiers killing their white commanding officers for disrespecting them doing training camp and stuff like that. They'll kill their white to get away. Oh, it's friendly fire or enemy fire, whatever. So that's what fragging is. So that happens a lot in war. And when people go to war to fight, they're not fighting for their ideology. They're fighting for their lives, the preservation of their life, because the number one law of nature is self-preservation. You're not fighting for no flag. You're fighting for the preservation of your life. Yeah, Joe Louis, you know, Jack Johnson reached out to Joe Louis to give him some boxing tips, and Joe Louis wouldn't take it because he said, I can't associate with you because you got, you know, you're a bad boy. Even though Joe Louis was sleeping with white women, but he was making a lot of noise about it like a Jack Johnson. He wasn't making all that noise about it. Jack Johnson was a very proud Black man, but, you know, you pay a price for that type of stuff. Yeah, but, you know, even Joe Louis was a pit against Jack Johnson. They're trying to say, oh, look, he's the anti-Johnson. That's why it took so long for another Black person to have a shot at the heavyweight title, because of Jack Johnson, the way he was flaunting in white folks' face. But let me talk about. Yeah, it's getting long. Let me try to cut this down. Let me see. Thank y'all for y'all patience. And I'm about to call it a night because these folks, well, he making a lot of noise. He making a lot of noise. Saying BS like that. But anyway, we talk about Leon Forex Amir. Yep. Got a person for y'all. I think this is a person. I want to talk about the Panthers 10-point platform and Tupac's Thug Life Code. But I think I'm gonna say that for a part 4 of the Judas and the Black Messiah review. I'm gonna say that. I'm gonna make a part 4 now. Oh man. Yeah, some people think that you shouldn't hire people from the military to be police officers, especially ones that saw combat duty, PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. I agree with that actually. Supposed to been really shell shocked. They shouldn't be, because like in the military, when you overseas in war, you can win medals for raping and killing people. You can slaughter whole villages and become a war hero, but you can't do that in civilian life. I don't think you can, not yet anyway, and get away with it. Yeah, but thank y'all. I appreciate y'all being patient. Y'all know who that is? That's Malcolm's buddy. That's the real Minister Baines. The one that Spike Lee should have just say, hey, it's Bimby. That's who he. I'm like, man, why you had to make up some Minister Bain BS, man? Because y'all do know that Malcolm's family was the ones who recruited him for the Nation of Islam. And this guy that got him on a prison debate team at Norfolk Prison Colony. And his name, he went by Bimby. I think it's Bimby. Let me get it right. Yeah, Bimby. Let me read a little bit about him. And his nephew actually wrote a great article on him from last year for the undefeated.com website. Wrote a great article, and it's called the Untold Story of the Inmate Who Helped Shape Malcolm X's Future. This could be a feature movie on its own. I'm tired of black folks almost 30 years removed from the movie. A lot of black folks still think Minister Baines was a real person. This is what Hollywood would call a composite character. He's based on several people. Minister Baines was not a real person. So if you would call yourself a Malcolmite, and you talking to me, talking about, yeah, man, you know, Mr. Baines, man, I was like, man, that guy portrayed. I said, he's not real, man. He's based on several different characters, composite character. But read a little bit from what his nephew say about him, Jerry Bembry. They call him Bimby. That's that guy nickname Bimby. That was Malcolm's actual Minister Baines, the guy who got him on the debate team at Norfolk Prison Colony. So to officials in the Massachusetts Department of Correction, he was prisoner number 22138, a tall, slender, light mulatto whose personality was described by his prison caseworker as intelligent, studious, influential among other colored inmates. To society, he was a career criminal, a man with a lengthy arrest record that extended coast to coast. Some charges were legit, breaking and entering, others loitering, vagrancy, likely the result of him simply being a black man in America. Let me make sure I got my mic on. Y'all can hear me. Yeah, I think my mic on again. Okay. To Malcolm X, he was Bimby, a man whose influence played a significant role in altering the life path of the famed Muslim minister and human rights activist. As Malcolm X wrote in his autobiography, Bimby was the first man I had ever command total respect Bimby was the first man I had ever seen command total respect with his words. To me, he was blood, my father's oldest brother, John Elton Bembry, Uncle Elton. Although I spent less than 10 times with him in my life, Uncle Elton remains the most brilliant man I have ever encountered. My personal connection with him came up during a discussion of Black History Month at the Undefeated. I wanted to write about him in connection with the 55th anniversary of the assassination of Malcolm X on February 21st. After the staff meeting, I contacted the Massachusetts Department of Correction and placed a public records request for his file. 3 days later, I received a response. Good afternoon, Jerry. Please see the attached. Okay. He's from North Carolina, his uncle. Let's see, skip through this. But yeah, go to Undefeated. They got this great story on Bimby. This Malcolm X's Jegna in prison. He came from money, but they lost their money to the Great Depression. I gotta read some of that. He said, Attn, North Carolina is a picturesque town of just over 5,000 people that sits on the north side of the Albemarle Sound, about a 90-minute drive west of the more popular Outer Banks. It feels like entering a time warp when you travel through the streets of Attn's historic district, an eclectic collection of colonial and plantation era homes, a charm that earned the town one of the 11 spots on Forbes magazine's list of the prettiest towns in America. Strip the area of the modern cars, and I would imagine Attn's historic district looking similar to the way it did in 1912, the year Uncle Elton was born to Joseph and Eva Bembry, my grandparents. Okay. Uncle Elton, I always refer to him by his middle name. To some of my cousins, he was Uncle Johnny, was the first of 7 children. See, like Malcolm X, he came from a family of 7. Well, I ain't gonna say like Malcolm X, but he was the first of 7 children. But he was the Jegna of Malcolm X, and I said about the number 7 playing a role in Malcolm X's life because he was into numerology and he was the 7th child. But Uncle Elton, I always referred to him by his middle name. To some of my cousins, he was Uncle Johnny, was the first of 7 children raised in what he described to prison officials as a loving, stable household, not far from the waterfront and less than 2 blocks from the Lane House, a 1719 structure on East Queen Street that believed to be the oldest surviving home in the state. Joseph Bembry was a barber in a town where even in a segregated southern state, there's evidence of a few success stories among Black people. The most notable being Josephine Napoleon Leary, a barber, along with her husband, who was freed from slavery at the end of the Civil War and purchased 6 properties in town by the time she was 25. By 2014 calculations, that would have put her economic wealth at $2.3 million. Wow. Like, interesting family that Bemby is from. Let's see. The property she built on Broad Street in 1896, the original structure she purchased in 1875 was destroyed by a fire, still bears her name and sits just over a block away from a monument to Confederate soldiers that was constructed in 1900. Interesting. It's quite possible that a string of tragic family events altered Uncle Elton's life. His father died in 1924 of a kidney disorder at the age of 30, just 1 month before the last of his 7 kids was born. His grandmother, Betty Bembry, died a year later of a heart disease. She was just 51. His mother, Ava, remarried in 1928. By 1930, she and her husband had moved to New York, where she worked as a domestic. But Ava died in 1933 at the age of 39. He lost a lot of people early, this Bemby guy. Wow. By that time, the family was scattered throughout New York. Uncle Elton's 2 youngest brothers were shipped to an upstate New York orphanage where they were eventually retrieved by my father, Joseph, and his brother, Charles. Man, it's just like Malcolm X, like they mirror each other. I see why they had such a bond, because of all that family tragedy, family broken up by the system, siblings, orphans. It's crazy. There was more tragedy in 1935. The youngest girl of the 7 siblings, Mary Bembry, died on Valentine's Day at the age of 13. Within months of his sister's burial in the same plot as their parents back in Edenton, Uncle Elton was officially introduced to America's criminal justice system. Okay, I'll just bear with me, y'all. It's a lot to take in here. The Great Depression, which began with the stock market crash in 1929 and lasted a decade, left a nation divided or devastated. None in America suffered more than Black people. That's the era Uncle Elton was raised, a time where the economic downturn eliminated the lower paying jobs. In his case, losing his job as a waiter and porter at a tourist cottage in Virginia Beach in 1929, that most Black people were stuck working. Uncle Elton went into survival mode. He followed the family to New York, where he worked odd jobs at a barber shop and at a shoe repair shop in Lower Manhattan as a boot black. He shined shoes. In 1933, he began a long stretch of unemployment, making occasional money in card games in New York. His criminal history began in August of 35 when he was arrested for vagrancy in New Rochelle, New York. He was loitering in a business district during the early morning hours, which earned him a suspended sentence and an order to leave the city. With no job, no home, and a scattered family, Uncle Elton began a journey to the West Coast, an 8-year stretch where he picked up a few odd jobs along the way, as well as earning an FBI file number, which being arrested 13 times in 11 different states. Wow. Okay. So there's a lot here. It's a lot here. He had an interesting, unique life of crime. Elton was committed to Massachusetts State Prison on May 12, 1943. His sentence was 5 to 7 years, and number 7 once again, and worked as a license plate laborer. A tall, skinny man, he was 5 feet 11 inches and weighed 165 pounds when he entered prison. Elton stood out for his light, complected face that was filled with freckles. He did his work with pride and always received high praise. These are comments from several prison reports, reads biographies and good fiction, devotes a fair share of his spare time studying English and other kindred subjects, always using his spare time constructively. A studious chap, well-meaning, polite, but a little too sure of himself in his assertions. Very good worker, proficient, and intelligent. Okay. Now let's get to this. And I'm That intelligence earned Elton a transfer to the state prison colony Norfolk, a medium security prison community for model prisoners that was launched in 1927 by Harvard professor Howard Belding Gill, whose intent with the facility was to rehabilitate motivated inmates in an environment that was more college campus than institution. Inmates were often taught by college professors representing some of the esteemed universities in the Boston area, including Harvard. Elton took classes while at Norfolk, earning a certificate after completing a correspondence course in elementary English and rhetoric, and followed that by taking vocabulary building part 1. He worked in the tailor shop there, pitched on the unit's baseball team, served on the inmate council, and regularly attended religious services. He was a member, according to documents, of the prison's esteemed debate team, and during that period between 1933 and 1966, when the inmates had a record of 144 to 8, that's 144 victories to 8 losses, while competing against schools that included Harvard, Yale, and Princeton. These are Black inmates doing their thing. Where's the movie for that? We're gonna wait for Disney to make a movie about that. For Elton, Norfolk represented a best case scenario behind bars. It gave him the ability to gain recognition for his intellect, something that was denied to him outside of the prison walls. Let's see. Yeah. So I'm going to read a little bit more and I'm going to close it out. The status and privileges he enjoyed at Norfolk ended on April 15th, 1946, when 20 inmates, including Elton, refused to work, telling guards no food, no work. As the prison superintendent was called to the scene, a guard read off each of the prisoners' names and asked if they wished to work. 5 inmates said yes and reported to their workstations. Several verbally stated that they would not work. Elton was among a group who remained silent. A guard who prepared a report of the incident wrote about Elton and what he perceived to be reluctant participation. This man could be sucked in on this. He was in a tough spot. Is not a bad inmate, but is in this group and will have to be punished with him. Okay. Elton was deemed unfit for open type institution and sent back to the state prison in Charleston. By the time he arrived back to the maximum security facility, Malcolm Little was already there, having arrived in February 1946 after being sentenced to 10 years in prison for breaking and entering and larceny. Uncle Elton would often express to his family his fondness for the man who Malcolm X became, but rarely spoke of the time they served together, aside from a letter to my cousin, Clinton, in which he said he introduced the future Muslim leader to the work of Henry David Thoreau. In his autobiography, Malcolm X says the two met while stamping license plates. My uncle, who was 13 years older, ran the machine that stamped out the numbers, while Malcolm X worked along the conveyor belt where the numbers were painted. Let's see. Malcolm X, in his autobiography, described the prison workers gathering after reaching their license plate quota. We would sit around, perhaps 15 of us, and listen to Bimby. Normally, white prisoners wouldn't think of listening to Negro prisoners' opinions on anything, but guards even would wander over to hear Bimby on any subject. I wasn't the first inmate who had never heard of Thoreau until Bimby expounded upon him. Bimby was the library's best customer. Out of the blue one day, Bimby told me flatly, as was his way, that I had some brains. If I used them, I might have cursed another convict, but nobody cursed Bimby. While Uncle Elton's influence on Malcolm X has been well documented, there was only one historian who appears to have actually spoken to him about their relationship. And guess who that guy was? That was Bruce Perry, who interviewed more than 400 people over a span of 20 years doing research for his 1991 book, Malcolm, The Life of a Man Who Changed Black America. Bruce Perry, a white man, did his work. Perry noted in his book that Malcolm X borrowed my uncle's dictionary so many times, so thirsty to expand his vocabulary, that my uncle eventually gave it to him. Malcolm X began telling my uncle, and as Perry wrote, plied him with questions about everything under the sun. At one point, Malcolm X, according to Perry, told my uncle, when I get out of this place, I'm going to be a bad nigga, but I'm going to be a smart bad nigga. Okay. Jed Tucker, the director of Reentry and Alumni Affairs at Bard, who has been conducting research on Malcolm X's prison years, describes my uncle as one of the several unsung heroes of the story of Malcolm X. Tucker mentioned Elton several times in his 2017 research paper, Malcolm X, The Prison Years, The Relentless Pursuit of Formal Education. Okay. Your uncle plays a key role in the popular story of Malcolm already, he wrote in an email to me and my cousin, though I fear it is more caricature than the in-depth treatment he deserves. On March 31st, 1948, Malcolm X was transferred from Charleston to the Norfolk facility, where he too was a member of the debate team that likely helped him shape his skills as a great orator. Malcolm X, who converted to Islam while in prison, was released in 1952. Malcolm X walked away from a life of crime. 7 months after Malcolm X was transferred to Norfolk, my uncle was discharged from prison, where in the 5 years he served there, he never had a visitor. He returned to New York and entered a world of illegal activity. His brothers, including my father, ran the numbers, and the sister-in-law would later operate a network of brothels. Interesting. His life of crime, according to the documents, continued. He was arrested at least two more times after his 1948 release, and was never able to get his life on track. So, oh man. Shout out to Bimby. Wow. So that's Bimby. And he should have been the Minister Baines character in the Malcolm movie. So it's based a little bit on him. So, yep. I think that show another picture of Bimby. So much stuff, man. There's so much stuff to go through. That's another picture of Bimby. But yeah, but read that Undefeated article written by his nephew. It's worth a read. So I was gonna get a little bit, but I guess I did enough. I did enough. But I guess I could show one more thing. I'm getting out of here. Let's see what I can show. I think I showed this. Defeated. This is the Undefeated article. Y'all need to check it out. It's worth the read, man. It is worth a read. A lot of information here. Lots of information. Go, Brother Malcolm. But anyway. I think that's I think they'll wrap it up. It's that's his nickname, Bimby. I just put in the chat. That was his nickname. But just look up Bimby Malcolm X. You know, it'll pop up in the search. Google, DuckDuckGo, whatever. But this is a lot of information, man. A lot of people, man. A lot of folks got bigger crowds and followers than I do, but they don't really feed the people like they need to be fed. It's so much information out here, narratives to consider and reconsider, things to think about. And that's why, I'm like, man, I be thinking I'll get out here about 90 minutes and it's been almost 3 hours putting this information. No, he's dead. He's been dead for a while. So if he was alive right now, he'd be over 100 years old. That'd be interesting to talk to him. But that's why, you look at Bruce Perry. He's like, when you do the work, it's like people get mad at white people for writing our stories and telling our tales, but a lot of us don't take the time to talk to our elders, man. I know some white guys, they're very successful telling our stories. And the reason why they're successful is that they'll go through the white pages, whatever. They track down these elders, man, that's waiting for somebody to find out about them so they could just give up the ghost, like tell their stories, they can die a happy death. And so I know guys, they go out there, they find these elders, these black folks that even their own family don't pay attention to, tell them all these wild stories, because people think that old folks been old all their lives. They haven't lived a life worth talking about. And that's not true. Like I said, I learned a lot of information growing up by talking to the elders in my family. Just talking to just not talking, but listening to old people tell these stories. So the white folks, they listen to these folks on their last leg and they take the stories and they spin it the way they spin it and they become bestsellers and they adapt them into movies and TV shows and stuff like that. I didn't even know that Lovecraft Country was written by a white dude. I thought a black person wrote Lovecraft Country. Some of the novel, whatever it is. But anyway, y'all could correct me if I'm wrong about that, but it's fascinating, man. It's in that article, man. You can look up that article from the Undefeated. think I kept y'all long enough. There's so much information. I think I can include this. Let's go ahead and get this out the way. Let's keep it at a part 3. And eat me a late dinner. I guess I'll do Dr. Short sometime this week. It won't be done today or tonight. Let's see. Share this right quick. I think important. People talking about the contract for America and stuff like that, and what's the plan for Black America. Let's go back to the righteous ancestors, man. Huey P. Newton and them, they had the Black Panthers 10-point program. I don't know if y'all ever read the Black Panthers 10-point program. It kind of addresses what we need right now in today's world for Black people. Y'all should Google the Black Panthers 10-point program. I can read a little bit. In 1966, Black Panther Party founders Huey P. Newton and Bobby Seale created a 10-point program, a set of rules that members of the organization would subscribe to and live by. The guidelines were eventually made available to the public on May 15, 1967, when they were published in the second edition of the Black Panther, which was the party's weekly newsletter. Okay. The platform is broken down into 2 sections. The first is entitled What We Want. Here, Newton and Seale break down the 10 things the Black Panther Party requests from the United States government, which includes, among other things, jobs, exemption from military service, and the freeing of all Black men held in jails and prison. The second section is What We Believe. The components of this section are included after each What We Want Now statement, and further explains what the party wants and why it wants it. The platform. We want freedom. We want power to determine the destiny of our Black community. We believe that Black people will not be free until we are able to determine our destiny. We want full employment for our people. We believe that the federal government is responsible and obligated to give every man employment or a guaranteed income. We believe that if the white American businessman would not give full employment, then the means of production should be taken from the businessmen and placed in the community so that the people of the community can organize and employ all of its people and give a high standard of living. We want an end to the robbery by the capitalists of our Black community. Okay? So it was on code, as y'all say. We believe that this racist government has robbed us, and now we are demanding the overdue debt of 40 acres and 2 mules. 40 acres and 2 mules were promised 100 years ago as restitution for slave labor and mass murder of Black people. We will accept the payment in currency, which will be distributed to our many communities. The Germans are now aiding the Jews in Israel for the genocide of the Jewish people. The Germans murdered 6 million Jews. The American racist has taken part in the slaughter of over 50 million Black people. Therefore, we feel that this is a modest demand that we make. We want decent housing fit for the shelter of human beings. We believe that if the white landlords would not give decent housing to our Black community, then the housing and the land should be made into cooperatives so that our community, with the government aid, can build and make decent housing for its people. We want education for our people that exposes the true nature of this decadent American society. We want education that teaches us our true history and our role in the present day society. We believe in an educational system that will give to our people a knowledge of self. If a man does not have knowledge of himself and his position in society and the world, then he has little chance to relate to anything else. I told you the education system is not about giving us knowledge of self. That's me saying that, not the Panthers. We want all Black men to be exempt from military service. We believe that Black people should not be forced to fight in the military service to defend a racist government that does not protect us. We will not fight and kill other people of color in the world who, like black people, are being victimized by the white racist government of America. We will protect ourselves from the force and violence of the racist police and the racist military by whatever means necessary. We want an immediate end to police brutality and murder of black people. We believe we can end police brutality in our black community by organizing black self-defense groups that are dedicated to defending our black community from racist police oppression and brutality. The Second Amendment to the Constitution of the United States give a right to bear arms. We therefore believe that all black people should arm themselves for self-defense. We want freedom for all black men held in federal, state, county, and city prisons and jails. We believe that all black people should be released from the many jails and prisons because they have not received a fair and impartial trial. We want all black people, when brought to trial, to be tried in court by a jury of their peer group or people from their black communities as defined by the Constitution of the United States. We believe that the courts should follow the United States Constitution so that black people will receive fair trials. The 14th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution gives a man a right to be tried by his peer group. A peer is a person from a similar economic, social, religious, geographical, environmental, historical, and racial background. To do this, the court will be forced to select a jury from the black community from which the black defendant came. We have been and are being tried by all white juries. They have no understanding of the average reasoning man of the black community. We want land, bread, housing, education, clothing, justice, and peace. When in the course of human events, it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and nature's God entitle them, a decent respect of the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation. Okay? So that's Huey's vision, right? And so there's a change, right? A change in the philosophy behind the 10-point, right? 6 years after the 10-point program's introduction, Newton made some adjustments to the guidelines to reflect the new direction of the Black Panther Party, which grew to adapt the plight of all disenfranchised groups of people. Among the major changes to the platform include the removal of the demand calling for the exemption of black men from military service, which was replaced by the demand for free health care, which is listed below. Okay. We want completely free health care for all black and oppressed people. We believe that the government must provide free of charge for the people health facilities, which will not only treat our illnesses, most of which have come about as a result of our oppression, but which will also develop preventative medical programs to guarantee our future survival. We believe that mass health education and research programs must be developed to give all black and oppressed people access to advanced scientific and medical information so we may provide ourselves with proper medical attention and care. The new 10-point program also combined the bullet points that call for the freedom of black people from incarceration and the trial by jury of peers for all persons. Another new point that was instituted was the one listed below, which was likely influenced by the United States participation in the Vietnam War. We want an immediate end to all wars of aggression. We believe that the various conflicts which exist around the world stem directly from the aggressive desires of the U.S. ruling circle and government to force its domination upon the people of the world. We believe that if the U.S. government or its lackeys do not cease these aggressive wars, that it is the right of the people to defend themselves by any means necessary against their aggressors. Okay, I know there's a lot to take in, but y'all read the contract for Black America, right? and all that stuff. But why we got to reinvent the wheel? They already talked about this. I mean, even Du Bois, a lot of our great ones had economic plans and visions for how we can self-govern ourselves and come into self-determination. But I just want to read that. And also, you see the head of Tupac. You know, Tupac is a Panther Cub. His mama was a Panther. You know, his aunt is Ashada Shakur. His godfather is Jerome Pratt. So he's a Panther Cub too. So I'm gonna get this out the way so I can just be the end of the Black Messiah review. That's about Tupac and the Thug Life Code that him and Dr. Mutulu Shakur, his stepfather, created. So inspired by the 10-point platform. Okay, that's Tupac. In 1992, rapper Tupac Shakur, whose mother, Afeni Shakur, was a member of the Black Panther Party, helped create the Thug Life Code, a set of guidelines which were designed to control violence in the Black community, which had become increasingly volatile due to the rise of street gangs. And much like he did in his music, Tupac called on the same philosophies that made up the 10-point program, most notably a disdain for the American government and the police when creating the guidelines which are listed below. So let me read this. Y'all first time hearing about the Thug Life Code, right? And then we'll be out on our merry way. All new jacks is number one. All new jacks to the game must know he's going to get rich, and B, he's going to jail, and C, he's going to die. Crew leaders, that's number two. You are responsible for legal, financial payment commitments to crew members. Your word must be your bond. Number three, one crew's rat is every crew's rat. Rats are now like a disease. Sooner or later, we all get it, and they should too. Number four, crew leader and posse should select a diplomat and should work ways to settle disputes. In unity, there is strength. Number five, carjacking in our hood is against the code. Number six, slinging to children is against the code. Number seven, having children slinging is against the code. Number eight, no slinging in schools. Number nine, since the rat Nicky Barnes opened his mouth, ratting has become accepted by some. We're not having it. Number 10, snitches is out of here. Number 11, the boys in blue don't run nothing. We do. Control the hood and make it safe for squares. Number 12, no slinging to pregnant sisters. That's baby killing. That's genocide. Number 13, know your target. Who's the real enemy? Number 14, civilians are not a target and should be spared. Number 15, harm to children will not be forgiven. Y'all hearing that? It's Tupac, Thug Life Code. Number 16, attacking someone's home where their family is known to reside must be altered or checked. Number 17, senseless brutality and rape must stop. Number 18, our old folks must not be abused. Number 19, respect our sisters, respect our brothers. Number 20, sisters in the life must be respected if they respect themselves. Number 21, military disputes concerning business areas within the community must be handled professionally and not on the block. 22, no shooting at parties. 23, concerts and parties are neutral territories. No shooting. Okay, 24, know the code. It's for everyone. 25, be a real roughneck. Be down with the code of the thug life. 26, protect yourself at all times. So I had to read that. I ain't feel like doing no Judah and the Black Messiah review in the historical context part 4. But even with Tupac, people get it twisted about Tupac and who he was. And it's interesting. Tupac was a deep thinker. He loved black people from what I can gather. Women, black people love Tupac for the most part. He has made timeless songs. I mean, dude made Dear Mama and Papa song. The same cat that made Dear Mama made Papa song. Same cat that did Brenda Got a Baby did Hit 'Em Up. Tupac was brilliant, and he was a Panther Cub, and he knew about Fred Hampton growing up. And even he committed his life to revolutionary suicide. And the thing about our people is we don't really overstand ourselves, let alone understand ourselves. And so to me, I want to show love to people who dare to struggle and dare to win. If you dare not struggle, you don't deserve to win. Like Brother Fred Hampton. Listen to Brother Fred Hampton in his own words. Yeah, the movie is nice, but listen to his interviews, man. This man was just 21. He got it. Even he didn't fall for the okie doke. Y'all fall for the Antifa, BLM. Fred was letting y'all know we ain't down with no agent provocateurs, man. We ain't down to jeopardizing our people, man. But I'm willing to give my life in service of my people. We must recommit to some of these values we have lost along the way in chasing that crappy dollar. We got to get back to the roots, and black men, it's our time. It's our time to be men. There's a reason why they fear a black man in a position of power. There's a reason why they fear a Malcolm. They fear Fred Hampton. They fear Huey P. They fear you, and you fear yourself. To me, it's like it's not living if you can't live your fullest self and realize your fullest potential. You're not living. We ain't living. This ain't living. What's going on? So thank y'all for hanging out with Brother Ron tonight. I didn't expect to do no, it's over 3 hours, Jesus. But, you know, it's so much to share. Cause I see people doing longer podcasts than I do, and they're not really saying anything. And my thing is, even with my resources, whatever I get to give, I'm gonna give it. But you know, a lot of times I find myself just sitting on information. You know, this stuff I want to tell y'all a while back, but you know, like I don't want to make a podcast too long and all this stuff. But this stuff is interesting. But when you love your people, you're gonna serve your people, regardless of how you may feel on that day. You give your best, and hopefully, this is the best right now that I can give right now in the circumstances. If you receive it, God bless you. May you be greatly blessed, amplified blessings and peace and love and happiness. If you don't receive it, I thank you for giving me some time of your time that you could never get back to try to figure out what the hell he's talking about. But if you like the words from Brother Herb, please spread the word. Subscribe to We All Be TV, our YouTube channel for the time being. You can support the artists, you know, Cash App, R2C2H2, Vimo at R2C2H2. You can Zelle, Google Pay, PayPal, R2C2H2 at gmail.com. Buy Artivist Art, R2C2H2.com. You can even wear Artivist Art. Got my Malcolm, my brother M's, and Dick Gregory 2 shirt on. You know, you got Dick Gregory, young and old. Got his friends, Mega and Malcolm and Martin. They all couldn't even make it to 40. But Dick outlived them over twice their age. So Dick saw all his friends had to die. Revolutionary's death, and he had to be the witness to that. And he did his own race. He ran his marathon. So I'm thankful for the righteous ancestor and his righteous ancestors, you know, brothers who paid the cost to move us forward. But never forget what they paid, and make sure that we could pay it forward by any means necessary. So thank y'all for having the patience to put up with what I'm doing. And yeah, the Teespring, to buy the shirts, go down below the description box to the shelf. You can access the Teespring website, R2C2H2's place. So I think that's about it. I thank y'all. I appreciate y'all for seeing it. Thank y'all. I appreciate it, man. I'm glad it could be a service to y'all. I really appreciate that. I don't really know sometimes. I be putting out stuff. I know it's hard to keep people attention this day, in the day and the age of distractions, but man, I was trying to stay awake doing that My Pillow dude stuff, but absolute proof, good information, but it put me to sleep. It was a great advertisement for his pillow, My Pillow. I said I could use a My Pillow when I was watching the documentary. But I thank y'all so much for hanging in with me. Man, this is an honor. I feel so much relieved that I able to get all I had to get out. No more. I had to do no part 4 of no Judas and the Black Messiah review, because I ain't reviewing the movie really. I'm reviewing us. This is us, man. So I want to thank y'all. Y'all stay safe out there. Stay motivated. Keep your eyes on the prize. Know that the best is yet to come. Excuse me. I'm getting tongue-tied. Words of Great Duke Elton. We love you madly. Y'all keep on producing and pushing. We got to fight the power. Not only fight the power, let's be the power to make a difference. You see how it works? Somewhere.